Mayor Castriata is excused, so I will be chairing tonight's meeting. Information on how to watch, attend, and participate, as well as agendas, minutes, and recordings can be found on Broomfield's website at www.broomfield.org/council meetings. Public comment is welcome in person or through our call-in service. Instructions for calling are available on the council meeting webpage. Public comment will be limited to 90 minutes total per item. The first 1 through 15 participants in the queue have 3 minutes to speak. The next 16 through 25 participants in the queue have 2 minutes to speak. If time remains, the next 26 plus participants in the queue have 1 minute to speak. For our hard of hearing residents present, we have wireless headsets available through the AV team in the back of the chambers. The City Council regular meeting is called to order. As mentioned previously, Mayor Castriata is excused. Councilmember Delgadillo is attending the meeting remotely. There are all of our council members in attendance. A quorum of the council is present. We will begin this meeting by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, Ute, and other Native peoples. Indigenous peoples have cared for this land for generations and continue to maintain deep cultural and spiritual ties to it. As the city and county of Broomfield, we recognize the responsibility to honor this legacy and the enduring presence of Native communities. May this acknowledgement inspire action that fosters greater understanding, truth, and respect for Indigenous peoples. Will everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In an effort to keep order for tonight's meeting, I ask council members to limit their comments to 5 minutes. If council members are given an opportunity to speak for a second time on an item, they should limit their comments to communication to 2 minutes. We will plan on a 10-minute break at approximately 8 p.m. We will begin with council's review and approval of tonight's agenda. Council may add or remove items from the consent agenda, or council may revise the order of business for the meeting. Does any member of the council have any comments or questions regarding this evening's agenda? Are there any objections to this agenda being approved? Seeing none, this agenda is approved. The only item under petitions and communications this evening is an update on the Broomfield Town Square project led by Broomfield Town Square Alliance, which is led by City Street investor Joe Vostrich and Pat McHenry and Millender White, Tim Fredigill, and developer executive. Tim Fredigill, would you please come to the podium and provide us with an update?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me this evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Joe apologizes. He wasn't able to join today. He had a minor eye surgery. He's okay, but had a bandaged eye, wasn't quite comfortable coming out. Quick update, Broomfield Town Square. Some of you may have noticed there's some earthwork happening out by the existing pond. Those were purely some investigative studies relating to the lake design, just doing some groundwater table testing, etc. So just evidence of our continued progress on the district work construction documents. Work has not stopped there, so we continue to advance the engineering and architecture related to the master site plan. So the district work would be, we refer to everything outside of the private development boundaries, and of course that's the backbone for the whole project. Since we last were here, again, those studies continue, that work continues on the architecture and engineering. We continue to fund that out of pocket, as well as devote our time and resources without cost here while we work through the front end of the project. Pivoting to private development in the first phase, if you recall, for which we've obtained site plan approval, you have the Safeway building. You've got a multifamily community of 318 units framing up the public plaza, the ground floor retail, about 35,000 square feet of ground floor retail. And then you've got an additional 161 unit building towards the north. That's the one closer to the existing tennis courts. Each one of those are going to be capitalized independently. I believe at our last update, I informed you of our progress on debt financing on the 318 unit community and the 161 unit community. We've applied to HUD gone through a HUD interview process, been invited to submit both of those projects for HUD financing. So it's a positive development. Debt appears ample and available in today's market, which is great. So, despite what you hear in the news about commercial real estate and the outlook there, lenders are active right now, which is great to see. Equity is more difficult to come by today, so that's still a challenge for this project. If you're, wondering what are the obstacles still remaining in our way, two remaining challenges: closing, the full equity stack for each of those vertical developments, those private vertical developments that are within the first phase, as well as the bond financing. Those are the two main hurdles we have remaining. We're still targeting a bond sale next year. Targeting for, it's probably third quarter of next year, a bond sale. Bond markets are still active. Bond yields are up. So that's a headwind we have going against you. Last time we were here, we spoke about other challenges on the project. You've got the perpetual headwind of creeping construction costs, perpetual inflation. Costs are rising, whether it's labor or materials. You see that. So when it comes to the district infrastructure, you're trying to balance that budget of the cost of that work with the proceeds that we will obtain from a bond sale. And that remains an unknown. We won't know until the time we issue those bonds exactly how much they net. That's the brief update. As far as, I guess, particulars, we've got some really great progress on the market hall with respect to tenanting. We have a prospective anchor tenant for 18,000 square feet of office space, which would be a creative office, more dynamic than your traditional suburban office use. This would be adjacent to the market hall there within the Safeway building. But again, part of that repurposing of the Safeway building. And I think that's it for now. And I know there's probably a zillion questions, but that's the high level update. Is continue to push forward the construction documents on the master site development. Debt progress is being made on both the active adult and apartments. We do have lender interest on the market hall building as well, which is great. We've gotten indicative terms from at least one bank, I believe 2 banks at this point. And with that, I guess I could open it up to any questions.
Great. Thank you for the update. We will now proceed with public comments. If any residents are using the call-in service, they should indicate their desire to speak by pressing *9 to raise their hand. We'll start with in-person comments. If there is anyone who would like to be heard, please come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. My name is Dallas Maneker, and I live in Broomfield's Ward 2 in the Via Vara area. I'm here to comment on the recent rejection of the Westlake Residential Development Project. I did review the hearing and I listened.
Sorry, if you can hold your comments to the general public comment, this is just for the Broomfield Town Square.
I apologize.
No worries.
My bad. Yeah.
No worries. Thank
No
you.
worries.
I appreciate you holding those comments. Any other comments for the Broomfield Town Square update? Yep, if you can just hold those until we get to general comment, that would be great. Any other public comment just for the Broomfield Town Square update? Anybody online? Great, thank you. Questions and comments from council are next. Are there any comments or questions from council for the Broomfield Town Square update? We'll start off with Councilmember Marsh Holshan.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My basic question actually is, do we have a date estimate on groundbreaking?
Yeah, be about this time next year, August, September, sometime in that time frame.
Okay, that was all my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate you guys coming out. Obviously, hope Joe recovers well for his eye surgery. Similar question as well. I asked 6 months ago, and again, 3 months ago, are there any additional costs that we should be aware of? Because yes, inflation's gone up, but so has some costs as well. And of course, our concern, similar to Marsh Holshan, council member over here, is just concerns of any delays or any issues with financing or, yeah.
I would say more so than costs, I would say that the cost of capital being up is probably the biggest cost consideration when it comes to question marks around financing. With respect to construction costs, hard costs, um, we iteratively price it wherever we're at in the plans. It's been a few months since we've repriced. You know, it doesn't do us a ton of good to reprice every month. So it's sort of like you get an updated set, you take it back out, you get the updated numbers. So there's no immediate concern on the district budget. And then with respect to the private vertical developments, those appear to be fairly stable right now with costs. We have labor rates still creeping up. You are seeing some relief in various commodity prices. Lumber is down a little bit. That's helpful. Then you got other materials that are up, copper, things of that nature. But you're going to have, fortunately, we're out of the zone of 10, 12% escalation in costs. It's more of a sort of slow and steady inflation at this point, for the near term at least, barring any imminent, additional trade war actions or things of that nature.
I appreciate the answer. Thank you so much, and thanks for being here. So that's all my questions, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Councilmember Lim.
Do we have some assurances that you'll be going to the bond market in the time frame that you specified? Because it seems to have slipped a little over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Undoubtedly, it slipped a little. The financial markets have been difficult lately, so the capital portion of this project has been a challenge. Conditions have changed over the past several years. We've gone from a interest rate environment of historic lows 3 years ago to above average today, and so that's undoubtedly slowed things down. Primarily with respect to equity interest in private developments of this nature. But yeah, we are planning on issuing bonds next year by this date or sooner. We have permitting to get through still when it comes to the site development. So it doesn't do us any good to issue bonds absent a permit, but we assure you we continue to push forward the construction documents to the point where they will be ready for permit submittal, and then working with staff to work through the, any permit comments they have. So we have a permit able to be pulled. And then at that point, that's when we're going to be imminently issuing bonds.
Okay, so you have submitted the documents to staff and then you're going through the preliminary back and forth?
We haven't submitted our permit set yet. So those are the
Have not.
additional efforts we're still going through right now to complete the construction documents to a permit delivery set, and then they'll be submitted to staff. Some other matters that we're working on, a 404 permit with the Corps of Engineers. There's just some floodway related administrative matters, but again, there's more architecture, engineering, and permitting work to be completed prior to issuing those bonds, rather than approaching it the other way around, issuing bonds prior to having a permit approval, and issuing bonds and sitting around on capital is an inefficient use of capital.
So just to be clear, there's nothing that you are waiting on from the city. It's all we are waiting on you.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, there's no staff delinquency on turnaround times or anything of that nature. No, nothing to my knowledge that we're waiting on from you all.
Okay, thank you. So you're going forward with testing of the soil around the lake for design work?
Yeah, I purely just wanted to make a comment about the activities out there in case anybody was questioning what that was. Was that commencement of construction? Just wanted to clear the air on that, that we were doing some investigations out there in the field, and it had to do with water tables. We'd already done several, what they call piezometric tubes and tests to test water table at, 10 or 12 locations, but we needed some additional data points. So they were out there doing some additional studies.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
And then I just wanted to take this opportunity, since we're on this subject, can we get a clarification? There's some information out in the community that somehow we could council could relook at investment in the lake. It's my understanding that that's part of the redevelopment and reimbursement agreement that we have with them. So could staff clarify that?
It's part of the STP that council approved in 2023.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you guys for being here. Good to hear that you have an anchor tenant identified for the food hall. I have a quick follow-up question of Councilmember Holshin's, excuse me, question about groundbreaking. Is that for the project, like everything related to phase 1 of the project, or are we talking about groundbreaking just for the food hall, and then you'll be going back and doing groundbreaking for kind of the wraparound housing with ground level retail? And then what's the status of those? I think it was 12 townhomes that we had approved.
Good question. Thank you, Councilmember. As far as groundbreaking goes, it'll be wham bam. It's a little bit to be determined on which capital closings are going to be happening simultaneously with the bond sale. Can't do this without doing details. I know I can go down rabbit holes, but the capital closings for the private financing need to see that the district infrastructure is going to be completed because the utilities, stormwater detention, et cetera, that serve those private developments are served by by the public development. So it can't be that the private goes way out in front of the public because those lenders need to see that the public is going to go. Now, the hope is and the desire is that you are coming as close as possible to the closing table of the bond sale with the private capitalization, the private financings for each of those 3 uses you mentioned, and bringing them all to the finish line hand in hand, and they're all closing on the exact same day. Now, that is a nightmare administratively. I've done that before. If you can imagine debt and equity groups for 3 different private vertical developments plus a bond sale all trying to come to the same closing table, that's a nightmare. So it's going to be wham bam in our best read of what the future looks like of who's coming to closing at the same time of bond sale or immediately thereafter. But at this point, we're trying to get them all to track, herd the cats to get it all to the finish line at the same time.
Okay. And that does include those 12 I think it was 12 townhomes is what we approved.
Yeah, and those townhomes do need to lag a little bit. So we haven't been pushing the financing forward on that. We'll probably be bringing in a third-party builder partner for those. As a side note, the townhomes, if you picture the site in your head, they're on the far west side, screening Main Street. You've got a 5-story building adjacent there too, including a precast parking structure that needs crane space, et cetera. So those are going to lag a little bit to allow that vertical activity to take place, and then that'll come in later. Same concept as before of the desire is to have this all come online coherently. And those townhomes are a shorter build than the building next door. So you let that go, and then townhomes thereafter, and hopefully they're both coming online about the same time.
Okay, and that does make sense. My next question is, since you're doing basically 3 types of financing, debt, equity, and bond, kind of what are your assessments of the market in terms of risks of any one of those not producing enough revenue to necessarily move forward with the project, and what happens to your calculus if that does occur?
Great question. Let's break it into categories. Let's go bond sale first. Bond yields up. If bond yields continue to rise, it's an inverse relationship to the amount of proceeds you receive. So if bond yields continue to rise, you will have a growing shortfall in the budget to complete district infrastructure. That can be resolved a number of ways. One is you can hit pause on, so you can take the bonds to market. If bonds have spiked, say, this happened actually on the eve of like the great financial crisis. You know, I think this is November 2008. Our bond underwriters, D.A. Davidson, I always ask the question, have you ever not been successful in selling bonds? And they've never not been successful in selling bonds. But they did have one deal that was literally, I believe, in November of 2008 that they went to market, but the markets were in turmoil. The pricing was not there. They tabled it, they pulled it back, waited for things to settle down, and then went back out for an issuance. So just thinking out loud, hypotheticals, like that could happen. We would never know if there's some black swan event, you know, out there on the horizon. But there could be continued creep. You get more and more visibility as time arises over the next year, which, you know, we'll be giving you all continued updates over the course of the next year as we approach closing. So if it became apparent that things were heading in the wrong direction there, we'd be bringing that to your attention. I think things have settled down somewhat lately. You saw a big spike there over the past 3 years. It looks like it's starting to settle down into a band where we have visibility. We hope. So that's, I guess, the bond category. I never finished my thought there on ways to solve that. One would be to table it. Two is, can you cut from the project? Are there areas of savings that, hey, it's not 100% what we were hoping for, but it's still pretty darn good. Like, think of the niceties, right? So, see, one thing you can't do is remove the pipe from the ground. You gotta serve the water. But maybe a paver needs to pivot to colored concrete or something in certain areas. There's things you can do for value engineering, try to bring your budget in line if bond yields were to increase, bond proceeds were to continue to fall. And then ultimately there's other, you know, hypotheticals like, okay, say bond yields are up 1%, and there's no way we can solve that with value engineering. Okay, is there other financing tools we could find? Or is there other sources of public money that could support elements of the project? I don't know, grants related to EV charging capability. I don't know. I'm just coming up with the hypotheticals here, but you know, pursuit of alternative sources of financing to help plug a gap might be something worth looking into. So that covers bond financing, debt financing, similar concept, right? If you know, interest rates spike another 2%, right? That would be bad for the financial underwriting of the project and would hurt the equity returns on the project. It's too hard to, you know, plan for every eventuality of a severe catastrophic outcome. But again, the most challenging one is equity capital. You know, private equity to invest in very large scale, institutional scale investments like this has pivoted right now, and it's very hard to come by. But we're fortunate to have a couple great partners that we think are going to be coming to the table for this one. Time will tell. You know, you got to still close that. Just thinking one phase. You know, say the apartments, you still have to bring a $50 million check from your limited partner at the finish line. Things can happen between here and there that roil the markets and cause them to shy away from placing capital. But it's too hard to look into a crystal ball and envision that not coming to fruition. But one thing we're certain of is that the concept, the project, the place, the people are unbeatable. And this is the most compelling mixed-use town center that I'm aware of in the metro area that's going to be this neat, really. You've got other projects that are great and they're cool, but they don't have the same recipe we have here. You know, I look at what's happening at Flatirons and what's at Baseline. They each have their own special things, but I think we have something even better here. And that's my sales pitch that I've given a couple thousand times now. I think this is an unbeatable project, and that means with time it will happen.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the tenants for kind of that ground level commercial, have you identified any tenants yet, in discussions with any, et cetera?
We haven't opened that up to the broader market yet.
Okay.
We continue to receive periodic inquiries from interested local businesses, which is great. We save those down in our files, let them know we'll be reaching out at the appropriate time. We haven't gone to market yet. We're just a bit too early from opening of those businesses. And I don't know, historically, that far in advance, you're going to see that tenant fall out before you deliver. That said, our partner, it's City Street Investors, as you're aware, they are both an owner and operator of real estate. And their core focus is food and beverage and placemaking Main Street retail. So they're our anchor, right? And it is probable that they'll be taking not one, but potentially multiple locations within this project for concepts that are befitting of the Broomfield Town Square.
Okay. Thank you. Those are all my questions, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for being here tonight. We did talk a little bit on email about soil sampling, and so I'm just now hearing that there's other soil sampling. Can we just have clarity on where the soil sampling is taking place? And I heard it was for the lake design. Is it for other things as well? Do we have results from the soil sampling?
I do not have the conclusive response on that yet. I haven't received any test results, but it has already occurred. They went out and hydro-seeded, backfilled the hole and put seed over the hole and repaired it. I think it was shortly before 9/11. It was like early September.
Yeah. Okay. And the soil sampling is for just, you said the water tables. Is that the only reason why we're doing the soil samples?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then my last question is just about office space. I've actually heard that it's hard actually to get office space going. So I'm surprised that that's an anchor, attraction or whatnot. So tell me a little bit more about that. I would like to know a little bit more because in the market, I'm hearing it's not a hot thing. I could be wrong though. Things change all the time. The second thing is do we have any other sort of anchor tenants that we're looking at? And if so, what kind?
With respect to the office would not be we want to keep things a little bit tight to our vest still, but it would not be your traditional local corporate office. It'd be more of a dynamic office experience. And the reason, you're correct, office market, not in the best shape. The reason this project is of interest is due to the compelling mix of uses, active lifestyle, live, work, play environment. And that's the target tenant for that office user. So we're optimistic about it. We don't have signed lease yet, but things look promising, and we'll continue to advance the conversation.
And then other tenants, it
Thank
was
you.
like, like small businesses, and what are you guys shooting for there?
Yep, small businesses, like mentioned, we continue to get periodic inquiries from local small businesses, continue to save those down. As far as some things we're fairly certain about, I think it's fair to comment on the beer garden. I think that's been discussed on historically for this one, is I think a virtual certainty at this point that's going to be a pretty sizable anchor. That's contemplated, I believe, for 5,000 square foot indoor plus outdoor seating. So as far as the retail mix goes, it's one of our better anchors.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Any other council member comments on this? We got just one beer garden. I remember back in 2017, and I see Lois Vanderkoy. She was another person on the task force way back when, and I think beer garden was the top request from the community for this site. So I hope that's coming to fruition. You had mentioned office space for the market hall. That caught me by surprise a little bit, because I was thinking that market hall was much more catered towards food and beverage and maybe some artesian things like that within that space. So I'm curious, that office tenant that might be there? Kind of what is the flavor of that, and how does that add to that food and beverage concept that had been pitched?
Great question, Mayor Pro Tem. If you, apologize, I don't have the exhibit here, but if you recall the Safeway building's large footprint, it's about 60,000 square feet. If you recall the site plan to improve pedestrian circulation as well as sight lines through the site, we've proposed a pedestrian alley running north to south through that building. The majority of the building's on the east side. There's also a smaller portion on the west side. That's where that office user is targeted. On the east side, the market hall and our artisan retailers is where that's all scheduled to be programmed, and that's consistent with how we've racked the interior of that building in our prior submittals and our site development plan. We actually went through very extensive programming of that building, circulating through 2 different architects until we landed on the right fit that we think will ultimately move forward for not only the east but the west side. But yeah, on the east side, you're looking at everything from the southern retail, the outward facing, good drive-by visibility from 120th there, as well as access to parking, more traditional retail, and that flowing through to the inside where you have the larger marketplace environment.
Excellent. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that clarification. The other thing was you had mentioned public monies and value engineering. So I'm curious, with those, are you anticipating that those changes that might need to be made in accordance with that value engineering, would those be changes to past approvals or agreements? Or is this much more of, like you had mentioned, the example of like doing a colored concrete instead of something else?
The latter, yeah. At this point, no anticipated change in programming. Nothing that if you weren't intimately involved with the project, you would notice. So unless you're a planner who'd seen submittal 8 and then this is submittal 9, I don't think anybody would notice any change in scene.
All right, great. Well, thank you for the update. I appreciate you coming.
You're welcome.
All right, we are moving on to council member reports. Does any member of the council have any reports or updates this evening? All right, well, I have one. I'll start off with a huge shout out to our staff for Broomfield Days. This last weekend, the weather was great. I would even lean towards spectacular. The events and performances were wonderful. The parade seemed to be perfect and jam-packed. I think that this was the most full from start to finish that I've ever seen the sidewalk. So a lot of people out there, great parade. So thank you for the community for coming out for Broomfield Days. It was great to celebrate Broomfield with you all. And thank you to staff for all of your efforts to make that a true success. And the other thing I wanted to report on was, council, as you know, I left early from the budget discussion last Thursday to attend the second half of the Broomfield High and Legacy High School football game to present the Mayor's Cup on behalf of the mayor for the winning team. I arrived at the Adams 12 North Stadium just as halftime was about to start. I walked a long way from the parking lot all the way to the stadium, passing some Broomfield students that were leaving saying, "We're getting crushed. This is embarrassing. We are going to get defeated tonight." Upon arriving, the score was 24-6. Broomfield at half, or Legacy was up 26-24, and Broomfield 6 at halftime. And as the paper said, Broomfield seemed to be cooked, which is what I thought. My son and I, we were walking across the stadium. My son says to me, "I see Broomfield's locker room door is shut. That can't be good." I agreed with him. Coming out at halftime, Broomfield looked like a fresh team, though. The offense would go to score 3 touchdowns while the defense would hold Legacy just 3 points in the second half. After scoring the goal-ahead touchdown to make the score 28-27, with just 2 minutes and 27 seconds left on the clock, Broomfield's defense would do what they didn't do much that night, which was cause Legacy to drop passes and ultimately secure an interception to take control of the final minutes to secure the second straight Mayor's Cup win by just 1 point, separating these two teams. Again, last year was one 1 point. And again, this year was 1 point. So congratulations to the Eagles for their win. If you missed this year, make sure you mark your calendar for next year's Mayor's Cup. It is not to be missed, and I'm sure it will live up to all the drama of the past 2 years. So thank you all for coming out and supporting our high school students. With that, we are now on to general public comment. This is an opportunity for public to comment on items other than the items listed anywhere else on the evening's agenda. If there is anyone who would like to be heard, please come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. Susan Hall, Ward 5. I have come here to just share some information, first of all. Also to think about what is truth. I have a quote here from Donald Rumsfeld, which represented the United States president. And he says, truth is so precious, it needs to be wrapped in lies. So it occurs to me that we have to be very careful what we hear on the media as to whether it's truth or not, and research it and look at how it's spoken about. I would like to see Broomfield have a resolution like Glenwood Springs, declaring it will not support committing war crimes by supplying weapons to retired U.S. soldiers that are now working along to keep food from the Palestinians. Also, we send them millions of dollars of weapons. They are using some of these weapons to shoot civilians as they come and try to get food. I have here a retired colonel who has reported this. He has spoken about the name of the young boy that he gave food to, and they promptly shot. I don't think we should be sending our oil, our weapons, our people, because it's a war crime what's happening. And it's also a war crime to support a country that is committing genocide. The UN has declared it's a genocide, and now we know. Now, one of the reasons we've gotten to this place is because all of our congressmen and our senators are taking AIPAC money, which is from Israel. Now, this is a way to bribe people to get what you want. Certainly, that should not be acceptable. This morning, I was watching Judge Neapolitano, and he said that the UK has come forward to say, yes, they were sorry for the Balfour Act, which was their part in having Israel take over the Palestinian land. The Turkey president at the UN this week said that it was so evil, he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it was happening. But the people that remain silent are just as guilty as those that are doing the crime, because they are helping to provide the weapons to do it. Hamas is a small elected freedom fighter group. They have never...
Your 3 minutes are up. If you'll wrap up your comments, please.
Okay, I'll just wrap them up because I would ask you to read this book by the Jewish academic man who has studied this issue forever. And he talks about how many times Israel has done this very same thing, and that the Hamas and Palestine has a right to defend themselves.
Thank you for your comments.
Tch.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, apologies for the confusion earlier. Again, I'm here to just talk really quickly about the Westlake Residential Development Project. You know, I did listen to last hearing and the public comments online, and I understand why the community opposed it, and I do respect those concerns. I do think that neighborhood character really matters a lot here in Broomfield. But at the same time, I want to speak to a bigger issue which this decision represents, which is that there is a worsening housing shortage in Broomfield and the northwest suburb of Denver in general. I did notice that most of the public commenters were older residents, and I saw very few people my age voicing their opinion about this project. And my age group are people that are being increasingly priced out of home ownership here. So when projects like this are rejected, I do worry about the precedent that it sets and the opportunities that we lose to add much needed housing supply. According to the 2024 Comprehensive Financial Report that Broomfield issued, the total housing permits have been trending downwards since 2016. It is true that multifamily permits have ticked up, but single family permits are down. I do strongly support high density housing, especially near transit and corridors, but we also must acknowledge that single family houses do play an important role in our housing ecosystem. They offer more stability and more autonomy for both renters and landlords. By contrast, these multifamily units typically end up in the hands of large property management firms that drive renewal policies based on algorithms. And so this dynamic does make it difficult for people like me and other residents that rent to be able to renew and stay at their apartments without having to move every 2 to 3 years. I do want to also commend the council. I think you guys have done a great job with adding housing and mixed use, especially around the corridors and RTD stations. And I think those are really smart choices. But when we do turn down projects like Westlake, we do need to make up the difference somewhere else, either by encouraging the developers to come back with amended proposals that do address the neighborhood concerns, or by identifying sites for smart, responsible growth. So, there are other states that have shown that increasing supply, even when housing isn't perfect, does help reduce the costs over time. So I urge us to do the same here. My ask tonight is very simple. It's just continue to prioritize housing with urgency so that future generations like mine can call Broomfield home. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next.
Mayor Pro Tem, City Council staff. I'm Sandy Anderson from the Broadlands. I'm heartened to see so many residents here tonight standing up and speaking out against violence, especially the gun violence threatening our schools and our children. I just can't imagine that that's why we're all here tonight. Let me share some sobering facts. As of September 15th, 2025, the K-12 school shooting database has recorded over 160 incidents this year alone, where a gun was brandished, fired, or a bullet struck a school property. Every town reports 90 incidents of gunfire on school grounds in 2025, resulting in 19 lives lost, 69 more injured, and the year isn't over yet. Just look what happened in Evergreen. A 16-year-old boy unleashed 20 rounds in 9 minutes, injuring 2 classmates before turning the gun on himself and ending his life. The sheriff's office reported that he had been radicalized by an extremist network. According to the Anti-Defamation League Center on Extremism, this teenager had posted neo-Nazi views online. His TikTok accounts were saturated with white supremacist symbols and rhetoric. Let that sink in. A child that should have been worried about homework or prom was consumed by hatred and armed with a weapon. And the hate wasn't hidden in the dark corners of the internet. It's out in the open, being normalized, sanitized, and even utilized. We are watching bigotry, sexism, racism, and nationalism be moralized and mainstreamed right in front of us. As we gather here tonight for our students, for our families, for the safety of our communities and public officials, let's not forget this. Yes, free speech is protected, but when speech is weaponized like it was for the Evergreen shooter, to create monsters filled with hate, we cannot stay silent. We must confront it. Thank you.
Next.
Good evening. My name is Joyce Parker. I live in Ward 4. Just a short aside, in regard to the first comment, I do hope that you will reconsider any arms shipments to foreign countries or even foreign counties. I hope your sites are a little closer to home. Mr. Marsh Horsham, am I pronouncing it right? For you. In your recent editorial, you brought up a valid point about chaos and violence, but you missed the point twice. People who are unstable enough to commit violent acts will use violent and deadly tools. We need to address the root of the cause, which is not the availability of tools, but the violent perpetrators themselves. Cain didn't need a gun. A rock was sufficient for him. We must address why we have children with such levels of anger that they resort to deadly violence. Mental health is the issue, not the tools. As far as your comments about Charlie Kirk's assassination, I hope you've taken the time over the past 2 weeks to go beyond the revolting hate rhetoric and find out what kind of a man Charlie Kirk was, and to hear his consistent message. Uncut videos abound. I hope you've made the time for that. If you believe that challenging the inherent racism of DEI or the factual basis of biology or the need we all have for a spiritual foundation, if you think any of these ideas are abhorrent, reprehensible, or vile, your words, you have been woefully misled, perhaps by the same corrosive voices that seem to have led Charlie's assassin. I hope you have discovered some of Charlie's words were taken out of context, twisted into a sick version of hate. As a public figure yourself, with many hours of video available, you should know that a skillful and deceptive video editor can make anyone into either a demon or an angel. AI has helped that a lot. Fear and anger are fed by the lies more than anything else today. Your words only added fuel to that fire. In your editorial, you encourage us to find our common humanity. That starts with an unshakable reverence for truth with humility. You should lead by example and apologize for your ignorant words and beg forgiveness from your community and Charlie's family. I also believe that someone so quick to fall for the lies about Charlie's words, so gullible to the hateful rhetoric, is not fit for the position you hold on the council.
Ms. Parker, your 3 minutes are up if you'll wrap up your comments.
You have failed to be a voice of reason. You must step down.
Yeah. Next.
My name is Rhonda Saris, and I live in Ward 3. I am Charlie Kirk. I am the face of someone who is a Christian. I believe that we all have an opportunity to speak the truth and to live in a free culture. I'll give myself away here in terms of my age. The first assassination that I recall in my lifetime was in 1963. When President Kennedy was gunned down. Since that time, in my recollective brain, and I invite anyone here to fact check me, I can remember this many assassinations, all the way up to Charlie. What I don't remember is any politician, any president, any public figure, any entertainment figure who has influence over people, or anybody in civil government at the local and state and national levels ever saying that anyone who was assassinated deserved to die. In fact, no one deserves to die. And in fact, those of us who were raised by the greatest generation were raised to know that we don't speak ill of the dead. No one could take to social media at the time, but they could take to television and radio. Public figures were always invited to speak. So for Council Member March Holson, I ask you this. Please reflect on the kind of leader you want to be. Ask yourself what kind of leader you want to be. I can't change what happened. We can't bring Charlie back, but I can tell you what I can do. I can do what Erica did Sunday at that marvelous memorial service. I can forgive. In the process of forgiving, however, it will be very difficult to forget. And my dedication, my resources, and my time now will go to help every young person in Turning Point USA to support Erica in her mission. And I hope that one of, or two or three of the 62,000 new chapters that have been requested will be in our town. Because when they come here, and even though they're a little farther away, I'm dedicating myself to those resources. I wish you well. I really, really wish you well. I won't forget, and I will scrutinize very carefully all the policies of everybody in any level of government, and I will support the values that Charlie Kirk reflected, and he always told the truth. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next.
Councilmember, city and count. Hi. A bit out of sorts. I need to get my proper addresses going. Mayor Pro Tem, council, city staff, and specifically Councilmember Marsh Holshan, I'd like to thank you for your editorial that you released recently.
Good evening. My name's Neil Allaire and I live in First Filing. And I forgot my water bottle. So council, staff, and Mayor Pro Tem, the cold-blooded murder of Charlie Kirk is absolutely reprehensible. I can't imagine anyone in this room isn't heartbroken for his kids and his wife. As we all are, for the too many children killed and injured in their schools, we've created a violent society. Quote, I grieve for his children. I grieve for the society that we have allowed where violence is becoming commonplace and which makes us all less safe. Another quote, violence against those whom we disagree with should never be the answer. Charlie Kirk was a person with inherent worth. And again, I also lay awake knowing my family and I are less safe today than we were or due to the events in Utah. Those are Councilmember Marsh Holshan's words from his opinion piece. They're included in Sunday's letter from the editor, which I urge everyone to read or reread. And there's no way that James said that this was a good act. There's just no way. You have to read that crazy. James did use some harsh words to describe Charlie Kirk's rhetoric. I don't think, though, that anyone can seriously deny that Kirk was provocative and used harsh rhetoric that some people found hateful. All of that is in the realm of opinion, which is the world that Charlie Kirk made his bones in. To now want James removed from council or disciplined in any way for voicing his opinion in a way you don't approve of is truly hypocritical. The whole point of James' piece was to condemn violence, whether it's against kids in public school or any school or public figures. Perhaps if he had worded it differently, people wouldn't be so angry. But honestly, you really have to twist his words to say he's espousing, quote, murder to silence speech, as Liz Law Evans did accuse him of in her LTE. Liz and others are following the angry, divisive playbook that's poisoning our national politics. The last thing council should do in response is to obey demands that come out of that playbook. Especially now that we're in campaign season, please, let's keep this angry, divisive, cynical politics out of Broomfield. Thank you.
Next.
Lois Vanderkoy, Broomfield Heights. Good evening. Salman Rushdie, who survived several assassination attempts and a vicious stabbing, said, "A poem cannot stop a bullet. A novel can't diffuse a bomb. But we are not helpless. We can sing the truth and name the liars. Stories are at the heart of what's happening. We must work to overturn the false narrative of tyrants by telling better stories." With the recent gun violence and word and belief violence, such as that uttered by Trump at Charlie Kirk's memorial and today at the UN, I wonder about our First Amendment rights of speech, press, assembly, and religion. The politics of fear, grievance, and dominance are dividing us. The facts of history and science are suppressed. Civil rights and the humanizing intents of DEI are under assault. Women's bodies and the earth herself are controlled and abused. Education is evolving into indoctrination rather than critical thinking and wisdom. Trump's words show how much ignorance, greed, and hatred are in our heads and hearts. Even you as council members and staff are maligned by some who follow Trump, and claims against you are inflammatory and misleading. Case in point, the reactive response to council members' thoughtful op-ed. This violence in word and deed affects everyone's sense of safety and belonging. How do we cope as our constitutional protections unravel? Can we stay true to values of empathy, care, and honesty for all in our community? We have a darn good record of creating a beautiful and healthy city through our spending priorities of creating and maintaining basic infrastructure, providing for a well-trained police force, supporting our library, recreation, seniors, and health department, balancing growth with actions to support affordability and prepare for future needs, and enriching our lives with open lands. Of course, there are conflicts and limited resources, mistakes made, and some in our community will always probably be angry and dissatisfied. The work of community sustainability is difficult and complex, and it requires tax dollars and community support. But I'd say we are on a good path and have made progress since I moved here almost 30 years ago. Thank you for your care, thoughtfulness, and hard work.
Next.
Council, I'm Mike Billingsley and I live in Ward 4. I'd like to comment on some of the same topic that has been brought up here. I do want to correct the previous two speakers in one respect, and this is very important to state, is that to not only post, but then to write a letter to the editor and state that someone would deserve to be murdered and assassinated, to even restate that or repost that is reprehensible and unbelievable. So I'm not going to mince words here. Every decent person, including all of you sitting here, should know how wrong it is for a soon-to-be former council member to post vile statements one day after the tragic assassination of an American icon, Charlie Kirk, a man who took debate with an open mic to college campuses and reinvigorated debate on college campuses, which is what we should be doing on college campuses. Most importantly, it was a severe lack of judgment in his role as a sitting council member to share a disturbing letter to the Broomfield Enterprise. It is a violation of public trust and a divisive act against half of the tax-paying citizens, at least in this county. At a minimum, it showed a severe lack of civil responsibility. As I understand, rules of decorum for you to follow were proposed, and you voted these down. Now it's your chance to make up for that poor decision. Some will say his hate-filled rhetoric is his First Amendment right, and that is true. However, his right does not mean his words have no repercussions. Citizens and you as representatives also have the right to condemn him for his hyper-partisan transgressions. Together, we have the right to remove his privilege here on this council for misuse of his public role. He committed premeditated acts lacking decorum, decency, and judgment. This is time to show that those given the right to represent the seal of Broomfield also carry a responsibility. Here is the fact: when a member of this non-political local board shows such poor judgment and affords so many of its citizens, it is the duty of other council members to remove the privilege. It can also allow fellow council members to show that we do not tolerate hyper-partisan individuals on this council. It is your duty to come to the middle of all of this and join the middle with the rest of us here in Broomfield, and to show by example that hateful, vile, cruel statements by a council member in the public square have a cost. He has been censored. Now he must be removed from the council.
Mr. Billingsley, your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you.
For comments. Thank you.
My name is Linda Harsh, and I live in Ward 1. Thank you for this time to be able to speak. I'm not very eloquent like two other people that spoke on this topic, but I'm very upset about this article in the paper. And yes, Mr. Marsh-Holshan has a First Amendment right to say whatever he wants. But there's also consequences for saying whatever you want. Many of us have faced them, and it seems like words like hateful, misogynistic, you just throw out those words whenever, or homophobic, whenever you want to shut down debate and make people sit down, which has happened way too many years in this country. And lots of us did just say, oh, I don't want to be called a racist, so I won't say anything. So this was not to promote debate. It was to tell everybody else to shut up. But Charlie, he was above that. He would have debated you. I don't have that ability, but he would have proved me wrong. You don't have any examples. You just have hate-filled words. And then you try and disguise it by saying, oh, well, it's not, no, it's, I don't really, any violence is not right. But then you throw the words and you're worried about your kids, and we're worried about our kids, and we keep saying and dumping this stuff on. And why do you think some of these things are happening? Because your words do matter. And you're throwing out words like homophobic just because you don't like what somebody says. Anyway, I ditto this lady and this gentleman, and I think you should resign. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Law Evans. I live in Ward 1. And since my letter to the editor was referenced this evening, I'd like to take this opportunity to correct the record. This is the letter as published. I apologize, I have dry mouth. I'm on this weird medication. So this is the letter that was published in the Broomfield Enterprise on Sunday. Last Sunday, the Enterprise published a guest opinion by Councilmember James Marsh-Holshan. In it, he wrote, quote, "On one side, violence is never the answer. On the other, Kirk spouted hateful, misogynistic, homophobic rhetoric. Some are saying he got what he deserved," end quote. Much farther down in the opinion piece, he added, "Violence against those whom we disagree with should never be the answer, end quote. I appreciate that condemnation, but many people I spoke with were furious at the earlier paragraph. The phrase "on the other side" is commonly used to weigh competing aspects of a proposition. I used a very personal example here. I love chocolate chip ice cream, but on the other hand, some say ice cream has a lot of calories. Both statements are true and both weigh into the decision. By using that same structure, Marsh-Holshin implied that, quote, "violence is never the answer," end quote, has an other side, namely that Kirk deserved assassination. I think everything we've heard tonight from many different speakers on many different topics refers to my next to ending paragraph. There is no other side to "violence is never the answer." Violence is never the answer. That statement is always true, no matter how offensive the speech. I remember going to second grade at Cole School on the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. It was wrong then, and it is still wrong. To Councilmember Marsh-Holshin and those to whom he referred, speech you disagree with is not violence or persecution. Violence is violence. Murder to silence speech is never acceptable. May God have mercy on us if we forget that truth. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else in public, in person, that would like to comment for our general public comment? Perfect. All right. We do have somebody online. If you would like to speak during general public comment time, please press star 9 to indicate your desire to provide public comment during this time. Once called to speak, please state your first and last name and neighborhood for the record.
So caller number ending in 177, please press star 6 when prompted to unmute and state your name and neighborhood for the record. He just left.
Okay. All right. Well, that completes our general public comment time. We will now continue with the report section of the agenda. City Manager Hoffman, do you have any reports this evening?
I do not.
County Attorney Rogers, do you have any reports this evening?
No, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right. Council's consideration of the consent items is next. Item 6D is a Board of Social Services item. As a reminder, Council is the Board of Social Services, so a vote by Council on this is a vote of the Board of Social Services. The clerk will read all the consent items by title, and there will be one opportunity for public comments and council questions and comments. Will the clerk please read agenda items 6A through 6H by title?
6A, approval of minutes for the regular council meeting of September 9th, 2025. 6B, proposed resolution number 2025-134, authorizing a construction agreement with Powell Restoration, Inc. for the construction of Stony Brook Drive retaining wall repair. 6C, proposed resolution number 2025-138, approving an intergovernmental agreement between Broomfield and Erie for local share of funding for Colorado 7 pre-construction County Line Road to Sheridan Parkway. 6D, proposed resolution number 2025-136-BSS, acknowledging review of expenditures and electronic benefit transfers for April, May, and June 2025. 6E, proposed resolution number 2025-116, authorizing and approving an increase in aggregate spend with TK Elevator Corporation. 6F, resolution number 2025-129, supporting Adams 12 5-star schools 2025 ballot initiative related to a mill levy override. 6G, proposed ordinance number 2285, amending Chapter 3-25 of the Broomfield Municipal Code relating to the disposition of unclaimed property, first reading. 6H, request for executive session regarding council's annual review and evaluation of their direct reports.
Thank you. We will now proceed with public comments. If any residents are using the call-in service, they should indicate their desire to speak by pressing *9 to raise their hand. We will start with in-person comments. If there is anyone who would like to be heard, please come to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing none, is there anyone on the phone? No. Next is, we will move to council. Does any member of council have any comments on these agenda items or questions? Councilmember Lim.
Thank you. For 6B, the Stony Brook retaining wall repair construction agreement. Could staff please confirm that the residents at the addresses named have been informed about this construction, I would assume, and beyond that, have any of the adjoining residents been informed yet, or will they be informed that this construction is moving forward?
Yes, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Brian Graham, Community Development. Yes, the adjacent property owners have been notified and we've been in communication with them multiple times throughout the design of the project. Once this is approved ahead of construction, as we always do, we will be mailing postcards to everyone within 1,000 linear feet of the project area. There's also a project website.
Great, thank you.
Any other council member comments, questions? Councilmember Nguyen.
One of my questions is about the Adams 12 5 Stars ballot initiative. This is just to support, right? Like as a council, correct? Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Any other council member questions, comments? All right, seeing none. Before asking for a motion, I want to remind everyone that item 6C contains an intergovernmental agreement, and item 6H is a request for an executive session, both of which require a 2/3 approval of council. Is there a motion by council that consent items 6A through 6H be approved? Councilmember Leslie?
I move the resolution.
And Councilmember Marshallson?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Council, please cast your vote electronically. And Councilmember Delgadillo, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
And all council members, oh,
My screen isn't working, so I'll vote yes.
Councilmember Cohen, can we get a verbal vote from you?
Yes.
Thank you.
For me.
And now all council members have entered their vote. The results will be displayed on the screen, and that passes unanimously. Thank you. The first item under action items this evening is a proposed resolution approving agreements relating to implementation of Broomfield's enterprise resource planning system. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And making their way down are the three key players that are going to be introducing this item. Nikki Macklin, who is our Director of Human Services, Kateri Abeda, who's our Director of IT, and Graham Clark, who is our Director of Finance. And with that, I'll kick it over to Ms. Macklin.
Good evening, Council. So tonight we are here to present on the Enterprise Resource Planning System. If you'll advance to the next slide, please. What is an ERP? An Enterprise Resource Planning System is essentially a single integrated platform that will bring together the city and county's core functions, including finance, human resources, payroll, and procurement into one place. By doing this, we'll reduce duplication, eliminate efficiencies, and gain a unified view of CCOB's operation. The system also automates many of the routine tasks that take up staff's time today, while providing real-time insights, dashboards, reporting tools, and secure electronic workflows. This means better information at our fingertips and faster, more informed decision-making. Most importantly, implementing the ERP will help us to serve our residents more effectively. It's designed to help staff work smarter and ensure that Broomfield continues to deliver high-quality services in a way that's both efficient and responsible. In short, it allows us to spend less time on transactional work and more time on the strategic value-added efforts that strengthen our community. Next slide, please. As we look at Broomfield's ERP mission and goals, at its core, the ERP project is about making work easier and more connected for our employees. We're listening to staff, removing barriers that make collaboration harder, and make sure people have the right information when they need it. This new system will be as simple to use, will help us make work more efficient, and give us better tools to make more informed decisions. All of this means we can support our employees better and provide stronger, more effective services to our community.
Graham Clark, Finance Director. In October 2023, Council approved a contract, next slide please, with GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, to provide analysis of our current systems, recommendations for process improvement, development of an action plan, development of an RFP, including the solicitation and evaluation of implementers and software. GFOA's Consulting Center is nationally recognized and has assisted hundreds of governments. With the help of GFOA, we've had some significant milestones in our upcoming implementation. Number one, we've identified a cross-functional steering committee representing multiple departments and has provided executive support on the project. We've also had a dedication of 3 project management resources, including a change manager. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, the creation of 14 process improvement teams, or what we call PIT crews. They're made up of over 100 staff from CCOB departments to lead the process and policy improvement. GFOA has been facilitating these meetings with the PIT crews to identify improvement opportunities, set goals, and develop action plans. Next slide. So after working with GFOA to analyze current policies and future process expectations, CCOB released an RFP in late January of 2025. The RFP solicited vendors or teams of vendors offering both ERP software and implementation services. We received 8 qualified proposals in response to this RFP. Those 8 vendors each participated in an extended demo, an interview process that included full-day software demos for each module. So we had a budget module, an accounting module, HR modules, and whatnot. For each demo, we had an observation panel of 50 additional members of staff to review software and implementation options. At the end of all these demos, the evaluation team of 15 members ranked vendors, and the evaluation team decided on the top 2 vendors. Those final 2 vendors were provided a chance to clarify and update their proposal based on their previous rounds. Each vendor participated in a day and a half with the evaluation team to further review the implementation approach, the schedule, and the scope. Ultimately, the evaluation team ended up choosing Oracle software and High Street as the implementer. That I'll turn it over to Kateri.
Next slide, please. CCOB, in partnership with GFOA, has developed a governance structure that Graham mentioned, featuring a steering committee that has and will continue to provide high-level strategic guidance for this project, ensuring alignment with organizational goals, making critical decisions, and resolving escalated issues. The steering committee will also establish the overall framework for accountability, risk management, and project success. Members of the project management office, including the manager, project manager, change manager, and a senior business analyst, will continue to lead the day-to-day activities of this project. The project team has been and will continue to be organized into 14 cross-functional teams called the PIT crews that Graham discussed to lead process and policy improvement and modernization efforts, as well as execute the implementation of the functional requirements in partnership with High Street. To this point, as Graham mentioned again, over 100 staff from CCOB departments have participated in this important work to develop a new chart of accounts that will feature integrated tracking of both programs and projects, modernization of CCOB's procurement function that will include better integration of contract management and budget control, improved capital asset tracking policies, and refined position control. So this work is just beginning. Next slide, please. As Mr. Clark mentioned, the evaluation team selected the Oracle and High Street IT Solutions team as the best value for CCOB. High Street has been driving transformative business outcomes for their customers for over 25 years, and public sector is their core business focus. Oracle's Cloud Fusion ERP has been named a leader in the 2025 Gartner Magic Quadrant for the 10th consecutive year. And we believe that these two partnerships will lead to the successful outcomes we have outlined for this implementation. The agreements before you this evening include a 5-year contract with Oracle for $4.7 million. This pricing includes the budget, finance, and HR modules, associated analytic capabilities and applications, learning and training modules, and the standard maintenance and support services from Oracle. The other agreement before you is a master service agreement with High Street IT Solutions for $6.2 million over the next 5 years. Next slide, please. So in front of you this evening is statement of work number 1, which includes the implementation services for the project that identifies the scope, schedule, roles, and responsibilities for the implementation, and other expectations for the project, such as milestones and specific deliverables that tie back to those functional requirements that were developed during the RFP process. The established final acceptance process will ensure that scope and requirements have been fulfilled prior to us signing off on the project. Staff is currently working on 2 additional statements of work as part of High Street's implementation scope that City Manager Hoffman will have the authority to approve, that include integration management services utilizing a platform called Bridges, and professional services for implementing a cashiering and payment solution called Teller that will integrate with Oracle. The additional statements of work with the Teller software, the Teller implementation services, and the Bridges integration platform will be added shortly after implementation begins. We plan to implement the ERP system in 3 phases over the next 2 years. The first phase will be the implementation of the budget module, which will support features such as driver-based budgeting, scenario modeling, and large-scale financial planning. The second phase will be the implementation of financials, which include core functionalities like the general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, fixed assets, and cash management, along with modules for expenses and reporting and analytics. And the final and third phase will include the implementation of the HR modules, which includes core HR, recruitment, performance management, workforce compensation, payroll and benefits, among others that provide tools for strategic workforce planning, compliance, and employee engagement. Next slide, please. We seek Council's approval of proposed Resolution 2025-13 for the Oracle Public Sector Cloud Services Agreement that is resold through Mythix, the Master Services Agreement with High Street IT Solutions, and also the delegation of authority to the city and county manager to authorize change orders, statements of work, and amendments to the agreements not to exceed the budget amounts for that fiscal year for each given service. And with that, this concludes the staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. We will now proceed with public comments. If any residents are using the call-in service, they should indicate their desire to speak by pressing *9 to raise their hands. We will start with in-person comments. If there is anyone who would like to be heard, please come to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing no one, we will move to public comment from individuals joining via phone, and we do not have anyone there. So questions from council are next. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. The time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. We'll start off with Councilmember Leslie.
Thank you very much. I've been through this process 3 times in my career, so I know how difficult it is. I want to compliment you on the process. Engaging so many members of the staff in what is going to be something they have to directly be engaged in over the implementation and the ongoing process is a very smart move. I think it was very well done. 2 things in particular, and I'm particularly interested in one, what kind of process of keeping the staff involved in the ongoing development of these modules will you have? Because this is not just a placement and play process. It's going to have to be adjusted to meet the requirements that you have here, that we have here in Broomfield. So number one, it's an ongoing process of development that will take some years, and you've laid it out in a nice way. It's going to take several years for it all to be fully implemented. And even after that, it's going to require continuous adjustments because requirements change, legislation changes, these tools have to be modified. Secondarily, you do have training involved, both from the vendor and from Oracle, but I'm most particularly interested in what kind of feedback loops will you be installing to make sure that it's not just, standard training, but that it's going to be, again, uniquely applied to the way the software is adjusted as you implement it here in CCOB. So whoever wants to respond, please.
Answer your first question, Councilmember Leslie. We are organizing the project in those 14 pit crews. There is a pit crew lead for each one, and our project management office will be guiding those teams through the implementation of the project, and they'll be involved every step of the way. They're the SMEs, they're the subject matter experts from both HR and finance and from around the organization that will rely heavily on to validate those requirements that we gathered in the beginning, make sure that they're still accurate and we're meeting those expectations for the system performance. And so they'll be involved every step of the way. And then your second question around training, it's a great question and one that we're focused on creating a strategy around training because as you said, once the system's up, we need to make sure that our staff are continually trained on new features and functionality that we'll get every quarter. And so we're working with our DDEI team to develop that training strategy. We'll work with GFOA and we'll work with High Street to establish a strategy that we can sustain long-term.
And I would encourage you all to keep the council informed as this rolls out. And then even after it's established, what kind of adjustments will need to be made over certain periods of time. And then again, the ongoing employee satisfaction with the product. Because so often the employees aren't getting trained enough and, they get very upset about not understanding how the now much more complex system works. So I'm going to continue to put the emphasis on how important training is. And I know Ms. Macklin understands that. And so I know it's in good hands. But at the same time, I want to just make sure that we all up here understand this is not just a plug and play. This is going to be a very complex long-term process. And again, I agree that the city manager has to have the authority to be able to make the adjustments within the budget as you had laid out. So I hope my colleagues will support that effort as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We'll go with Councilmember Nguyen, and then we'll go online to Councilmember Delgadillo.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Looking at the background of the current financial system, seeing it's been in use for 18 years, it is wild that we are finally, remodeling and finding a new system. So I guess my question is, worst case scenario, what happens if we don't pass this and we don't support the change? What would happen to the finances or to the software system that we're currently using? Will it be even still functional in the next 5 years?
I'm gonna take, I'll take that one. All of the air just came out of everyone in the back because I can briefly hear them communicating back there. Not moving forward with ERP, Councilmember Nguyen, would be not just detrimental for staff. The systems aren't supported. You can't find the mechanics. You can't find somebody that understands what the coding and definitions and spreadsheets were 18 years ago. So one of the key components, and I'm sure Councilmember Delgadillo will be able to attest to this, when you have technology is a quasi equalizer for institutional knowledge. And when you are transitioning, one of the most important things that we do as leadership is design, implement, and execute a succession plan so that there are not those significant gaps, not only in historical knowledge, but in SOPs and how we do business. This ERP will be as meaningful for our community from a transparency perspective. Every year we go through the budget. Every year we find ourselves having to do a litany of explanations from the multitude of spreadsheets that we have. This will be a transparent tool where the community will be able to see darn near live time of how we're spending the money, under what circumstances we're spending the money, who's designing to spend the money, what is the allocation methodology, what is the alignment. And I say that clearly because these conversations that we've been having over the last 3 years to get us to the point that we are right now, it is a game changer. My husband hates it. He's listening tonight, as he always does on Tuesday evenings. He hates that word because there's so often that isn't the correct term. For us, coming into the 21st century, this ERP is just that. Not just from a staff perspective, not just from a transparency perspective, but it brings us from spreadsheet nirvana into an automated system that we are able to track and entertain individuals. We have Class A staff right now. This is the strongest team that I have in my 25 years, certainly in the 5 years that I've been city manager. The reason that this is so key from an ERP perspective, our entire finance department can go to any municipality. We are one of the only left, other than rural communities, that are still based in spreadsheet. The fact that they've continued to stay with us in order to see this through to fruition says a lot about those teams. Big shout out to the folks that are in the back that have continued to do these budgets from a spreadsheet, Mr. Clark included. I'm going to get off my soapbox now. We're just very excited about this ERP. It's been about 3,000 hours that we have spent getting to this place.
My thanks for the explanation, Manager Kaufman. And my intention was not to scare y'all with the thought. It was just to, highlight the fact that we are entering a new era with, I guess, revolutionizing, transforming the current system. And I am shocked that you're using a system from 18 years ago. So those are my questions, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, thank you. Next is Councilmember Delgadillo.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I had a question surrounding what our agreement looks like when it comes to documenting the process of this transition and making sure we have a very strong understanding of the infrastructure. And I ask that in advance in the beginning of this process because I hope and I'm sure this partnership will be very fruitful. Maybe it won't, or perhaps one day Oracle Cloud maybe isn't the go-to software anymore, the go-to piece of infrastructure for us anymore. And so I ask for the sake of future-proofing, in order to ensure that this transition process, perhaps to a new system, can be done more easily in the future, do we have any agreements with Oracle or with anyone in terms of documenting the processes they have, whether there's a code repository that occurs, do we have access to that code repository? I just worry about institutional knowledge being lost and us having no sense of how this data and this information got there. Whereas it's really easy to plan for that on the front end and get everything set up very nicely so that we end up with saving ourselves a lot of pain in the future.
An excellent question. I think we're going to have Mike from GFOA answer that question. Graham, do you want to start and then have Mike finish it, or have him introduce
I was just going to
himself?
introduce Mike. Mike Muha is with GFOA, as City Manager Hoffman mentioned. He's been with us from the beginning, so almost 2 years now, and he's done nearly hundreds of these. Some of us have had the experience of doing some of these, but Mike's done a lot more, so I'm going to have him talk about that.
Yeah, good evening, Council. Just to answer the direct question, I led the efforts to negotiate the statement of work with High Street on behalf of the City and County of Broomfield. 2 points of documentation. First, even before we get into the services that High Street will be performing as part of the configuration and design of the system, GFOA's team has been working with the Broomfield pit crews over the last 1.5 years to document business process, to document requirements, to look at a future state vision for what these administrative processes look like. One of the things that we've said over and over again is that we're replacing a system, but the system isn't just limited to the technology. The system that we're really looking at is the combination of the people, the process, and the policies, along with that technology, that really run the administrative functions within Broomfield. And we've taken time to document those people, or those people's roles, those policies, and those processes that currently run those administrative processes. Going forward, one of the points that GFOA was particular on in the negotiation of the work with High Street, who will be setting up and configuring the Oracle software, was to have clear deliverables. And the way that we've defined deliverables in the statement of work is they're work products that will be officially reviewed and accepted by the Broomfield team. Those deliverables in the contract, and there are over 50 of them, lay out clearly the work that High Street will be doing to document not only the configurations made within Oracle, but the adaptation of Broomfield's business process to the technology, then along with the specific requirements for reports, for data conversions, and for interfaces. So there are a number of different deliverables that will be produced as part of this work that work to kind of memorialize the decisions and the discussions that take place during the project that will aid in potentially recreating that, but then also providing training tools and resources for future staff to understand that the decisions were made during this project.
Right, that's very helpful and very reassuring, because there is nothing that I think one of my biggest personal turnarounds has been freaking out because someone is gone and we don't have any documentation, and then finding out that everything is linked, the repository is there, everything's great. So that's great to hear you've thought about that in advance, and that was really my only question and concern. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Councilmember Delgadillo. We'll go with Councilmember Lim and then Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you. On page 1 of the memo, it says, this has got to do with where the money is coming from for the project. It says the project plan is planned to be paid in part by the CIP budget, 2025, 2.73 million, and 2026, 3.64 million, and in part with the general operational budget. That's the last part of that is what I'm not clear about. What amount and where is that amount coming from in the general operational budget? I traced, that's why I was looking at the CIP documents. I traced it to the in the CIP documents, but I'm not clear what amount or what department or anything is where the funds are coming from out of the general operational budget.
Thank you. David Acevedo Yates, Deputy Director of Finance. Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Councilmember Lim, thank you for that question. So as we drafted the memo, it was a huge team effort to draft this because of the complexity of the project and how it is both a capital project, but there is an ongoing aspect of the project, and that comes in the software license fees. Now, the part of the complexity is we do have a 5-year CIP plan where we are looking out, obviously, from now until 5 years, where we can present the spending plan on that. So when you look at the memo, if you look down below that in the financial considerations, you'll see a project plan that coincides with the spending in these sources and use of funds. So that first line in the sources is the CIP budget, which has a total of $9.5 million in projects year 1 through 3. The general fund operating budget would come into play in years 4 and 5, which help support the ongoing software costs. So part of the issue in presenting this is that we don't now present a 5-year operating budget. And so you won't see that in the current budget as we've proposed for 2026, because we're not talking until 4 years from now. The ongoing software is standard practice as we have to pay for the maintenance and the software licenses that go with that. So the plan would have always been to transition that from the implementation of the project over the next 3 years to then ongoing software costs with the license fees.
Okay, so then the CIP costs that are planned out further into 27, like there's $800,000 or something in that. Is that for consulting services still? I assumed looking at that 800,000 that included the software, but you're saying it doesn't now?
So when we plan the CIP budget and this project in particular, at the time that we were creating the CIP budget, we had not yet selected a vendor. So we didn't quite know exactly what the contract was going to look like or what the expenses were going to be. So as we look to do the next year's CIP budget, we would, we would now reflect back on the signed contract and we would adjust the CIP budget accordingly.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay, there is a big, when I looked at the CIP plan, there was a big difference between the estimate in the 2025 CIP plan versus the estimate in the 2026 CIP plan. Is that not understanding the scope of the project, or what? Could you explain that huge difference?
Yeah, the main difference there is that we've added the HR module. So we just added that just recently, kind of by the recommendations of GFOA to do it all at the same time. Previously, when we looked at it last year, it was just a finance only. And so that's the main difference.
And then the memo refers to the previous existing HR module that I would summarize as limping along and not very functional. So that the HR component is actually the last in the implementation phase. So I'm assuming we're just going to have to limp along with the HR. Are we still utilizing the older HR system in the meantime till we're not hunting and giving up on it altogether?
Well, we'll be using the old system, which is called Boris, for the next year or so until we are ready to transition into the new Oracle-based software. So yeah, I guess we'll be limping along for the next year, which is what we have to do. And I mean, we've been limping along in the enterprise software for a long time too. So, the one thing I can say is staff is extremely excited. That's not always the case when you do an ERP. Sometimes they're very hesitant. Our staff's very excited, both on the HR side and the finance and IT side, to get this project going.
And part of it, Councilmember Lim, is while we would love to be able to purchase all of these elements, it really is, you have to save up do the parallel path when you have those funds. So the carry forward of all the CIP. So we've been saving for this for 3.5, almost 4 years. So again, thus, just like in development, you have to phase it in simply because you don't have those CIP funds. And from a prioritization perspective, it really does categorize, and that's why the conversation and the answer by Deputy Director of where those funds are, it really is, it comes back to that phased approach. So limping along is a good terminology as I'm looking at our HR director, but it's not on life support. Otherwise, there would have been a conversation about prioritization. So limping along until we can develop the other CIP funds while we're working on implementing the first on the finances, which is, again, it's a huge lift for any organization to be able to do more than one element at a time. You have to get one piece in, get it locked in, have it become not standardized or normal before you shift focus on Plan B. So one is staffing and capacity, and the other is funding those other components and elements.
Okay, thank you. And I think a lot of us are looking forward to the ERP system. We have been told frequently in response to questions, wait till we get the ERP system. So a lot of us are looking forward to this, and I appreciate all the stakeholder work you did, engagement that you had in the departments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor Tim. I just wanted to follow up on a line I thought Councilmember Delgadillo was pursuing in terms of the sense, this is, you said an 18-year-old system we're using now. So if that was a car, it still had a cassette player in it when you got it, right? So technology has changed. We don't want to go another 18 years. So, and it's going to take 2 to 3 years just to get this one up and running. So, and then by the time year 5, the world has changed and perhaps we need to start planning for the next system. Is there a cycle built in to avoid another 18-year drought, so to speak? Because I'm sure there was a lot of inefficiencies using an 18-year-old system and piecing it together. Like my son's car is that old and he's got all sorts of attachments to make things work. But
yeah, so I think your analogy is correct. I think that part of maintaining a system is kind of the good governance of keeping it updated. And part of what makes this system different than the 18-year-old system that Broomfield currently uses is that it's a completely different model of rolling out technology. The model that the enterprise system was based on was a server-based platform that required Broomfield to go through major extensive upgrade projects in order to upgrade to the next version of that technology. So what happens over the lifespan of that software is you tend to have these major large projects. With major large projects, it becomes very easy to defer those projects and to get farther behind. And as you get further and farther behind, it makes it that much more difficult to take on the next project. And over the 18-year cycle of enterprise, they have deferred some of those improvements and have continued to operate with the cassette player playing, music. The new software as a service model that the Oracle product is based on requires that Broomfield take on regular and frequent updates. So Oracle maintains one version of their software. They will continue to push out new versions of that software on a quarterly basis. And Broomfield will have to kind of slowly adopt to that new technology. So you think of this as your mobile phone. Android or Apple continues to push out new operating system enhancements. That's what's going to happen with Broomfield's enterprise system. And then Broomfield will have to maintain a governance structure and a project enterprise in order to be able to train on those new updates, test those new updates, and adopt them slowly so that over the 18-year period, they won't just be relying on the same system that they have today. They will continue to make enhancements to that system on a quarterly basis going forward from here. It's also incumbent on not only relying on the software to motivate those changes, but also Broomfield's team to be able to stay up with changes in external requirements, changes in best practice, changes in modernization of policies. And I believe along with this project, one of the steps that we've been taking as a project team is not only to prepare for the technology, but prepare the environment to manage that technology. So putting in place those pit crews, putting in place that governance structure will put Broomfield in a better place to proactively identify and drive towards future improvements once the base foundation has been laid.
If we have a 5-year contract and there's question marks on 6 through 10, at year 5, there'll be a decision point whether to keep building this system or whether something better has come along, correct? And that'll be built into your process. You'll start thinking about what's next in year 5. So we don't, maybe this system is a 10-year system at best.
Yeah, correct. I think there's a fixed 5-year term for this contract now with years to extend beyond that. The extension years really provide some price certainty, but the realistic expectation is that this is a 10 or 15-year system that will be continually upgraded throughout that period.
I ask because I think for an outsider, you look and see these costs are quite breathtaking. So can you put in context, why does it cost so much? And how do we keep the cost low and make sure it's being used efficiently, if you know what I mean? What are the real, I know you're going to use the car analogy, you're going from dials to a big fancy screen.
Yeah.
But what are the real tangible upgrades that we'll see, both from the staff point and from residents in particular? Will they notice what this new system will provide for them?
Sure. Yeah, I can answer the question to start, and then I'll defer to the staff here as well. These are expensive systems, but if you look at the scope of what these systems manage, it's extensive throughout the whole organization. Every dollar that Broomfield takes in from fee revenue, tax revenue, every expense that Broomfield will make from a salary or a supplier perspective is going to go through this system. Every employee that currently works for Broomfield is going to touch this system. So the software provides the tool to automate and control many of these processes. And this is a different model than what Broomfield uses now. So in addition to the infrastructure that Broomfield has to maintain to run servers, this software as a service model will provide that and continue to upgrade that. So from a disaster recovery perspective, from a business continuity perspective, from a security perspective, those costs are built into the software cost, where they otherwise maybe now would be additional costs that Broomfield staff would take on with external contracts. From a software perspective, I mentioned, or from a process perspective, I mentioned, we consider this system to be a combination of policy, process, and roles. So one of the reasons why these implementations take a while, and really this contract does not represent the start of the implementation. This represents kind of a midpoint. The Broomfield team has been doing extensive work to prepare for this project and outline expectations for process modernization and policy change. Is that consultants will be going through and working kind of step by step through all of these processes to pair it with the system, to talk about opportunities to implement best practice, to look at what peer organizations are doing, both within municipal government, but also in a variety of different industries, to look at better practices for things like managing contracts, processing payments.
So if I'm a resident, am I going to experience a difference in how I pay my water bill?
Yeah, and actually that's a good experience. So one of the contracts that we were talking about is the centralized cashiering component of this. Currently, Broomfield takes in payments, I believe, in over 30 different revenue systems. Part of this project will consolidate that down to a handful of systems. So it'll provide a much more streamlined customer experience for citizens doing business with a variety of different Broomfield departments.
And my water bill will be electronic?
Could be. You could pay you could pay your water bill and any other bill from the same place.
Okay. And I had one last question, and then I know, having gone through transitions and other jobs, I don't know if Councilmember Leslie can speak to this. Sometimes you get really excited about the new bells and whistles, and you end up with a system that's too robust. And I don't know if you took that into account. If anybody's experienced Salesforce, what a freaking nightmare the day one that is, because it's really, really hard to learn. Is this an easy system? Is this one where Councilmember Leslie's training budget will not explode because it's hard to get your mind around so many changes and things that don't seem intuitive that you're doing?
I can't answer if it's an easy system. I think it's an easy system. I'm used to using these types of systems, but what I can say, and I think is a huge point of emphasis for this project, and what I'm proud to be able to report to all of you that we've been able to accomplish, is that if you read the RFP for this project, and if you look at the scope of work for this project, It is based on business outcomes. So it's taking what could be very complex technical components and it's communicating that in terms of what it means for the business operations of Broomfield. So success for this project is based on whether the system is used to produce better outcomes. And my plan as we continue on through this project is to work to ensure that those outcomes are easily communicated, tested, and trained so that when the organization does go live, folks feel ready and confident to be able to use the system. And part of that is simplifying the technology to create a standardized, kind of simplified flow to what Broomfield has now.
All right, thank you. And you'll be on scene for that first week, right?
I'll be helping, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Not seeing any other questions. I have one quick one. So in the memo, it stated that all the contracts that are proposed with this resolution are subject to annual appropriation of funding by the city council and can be terminated if future appropriations are not available. So just correct me. This would just be starting in year 4 as years 1 through 3 are paid on the front end. Is that correct? So it would just be after.
Well, every contract that we have says that. So any of our CIP, it's always subject to the appropriation that next year. So we, when we come to the budget here in the next month in October, you'll be doing the appropriations for 2026, and each year thereafter, we have to do it by that way. So that's why it states that.
Okay. But we are paying on the front end for years 1 through 3, though, out of that CIP, or are we paying that in lump sum?
Yeah, there's several phases to the payment.
Okay.
So, depending on where it is in terms of milestones.
Okay.
So each of these milestones comes with a payment to the vendor.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
Software is quarterly in arrears.
Can you
Yeah,
restate
go
that?
ahead, Mike.
So as part of the implementation contract, we've defined payment milestones based on progress. So as High Street completes work and as that work is accepted, it's associated with a payment. So we're paying after that work is completed, and those will take place over the 3-year history of the implementation. The software is a flat amount based on a subscription period, and that is paid quarterly in arrears.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. Any other questions from council colleagues? All right. Next is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2025-133. Will the clerk please read the resolution by title?
Proposed resolution number 2025-133, approving agreements with Mythix LLC and High Street IT Solutions LLC relating to implementation of Broomfield's Enterprise Resource Planning ERP system utilizing Oracle Cloud Services.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution? Councilmember Ward?
I move the resolution.
Is there a second? Councilmember Nguyen?
I second this motion.
Is there any discussion? All right, well, I will have some discussion because I think this is a big deal. During my 8 years on council, there have been maybe more than a few monumental changes made in Broomfield, but one that I would say needs to be near the top is the resolution before council tonight. From my vantage point, for too long, we have felt the impacts of not having a cohesive system to complete Broomfield's finances, our procurements, our budgets. Broomfield's lacked the common tools available in a lot of our peer governments to automate business processes, provide advanced analytics, and to extend self-service access to employees, managers, and customers, as Councilmember Cohen said. Our staff has greatly extended the shelf life of the current system, but I believe a change does need to happen now. I appreciate the foresight of the city manager and staff in 2023 to set Broomfield on the path to greatness by creating this process to assess the needs of the organization, put in place policies and procedures, create an RFP, conduct the necessary interviews and product testing, all to get to this point today. And of course, all of this on top of the other demands of your jobs. So I just appreciate this. And with council's approval tonight, these individuals, I believe, will have made a massive positive mark on Broomfield and will help steer the future of this community to new heights. My appreciation and gratitude for your dedication, your determination to move past these, what we've seen, these silos, the status quo, and into a frontier full of opportunities and innovation. So I'm excited about this future. I'm nervous because I know that this is going to be a lot of work, and we're putting a lot on your shoulders. But I really do believe that this is going to be monumental for Broomfield as we continue to move forward. So thank you to all of your work. Any other discussion, council? All right, seeing none. Council, please cast your vote electronically. Councilmember Delgadillo, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
And all Councilmember Cohen.
Yes.
All right, all council members have entered their votes. The results will now be displayed on the screen, and that passes unanimously. Excellent, thank you, council. And with that, it is 1 minute till 8 o'clock, so we will take our 8 o'clock break. Council, we will return at 8:10. You got 11 minutes. Welcome back. Next under action items this evening is a proposed resolution adopting the Broomfield Transportation Safety Action Plan. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And making his way down is Bryce Hammerton. I know that council is very familiar with his responses, which are always exceptional. But we're excited to hear about the Transportation Safety Plan. Bryce, introduce us and walk us through, please.
Sure. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Bryce Hammerton, presenting the Broomfield Transportation Safety Action Plan. I wanted to start with some quick thanks. We have our internal team. Sarah Grant is here today. And then we have our consulting team as well. Alicia Zimmerman with Fox Tuttle Transportation Group and Joe Olson with Next Phase Engineering. You may hear from them later today as well. And of course, thanks to all the stakeholders and the community members who helped to give us feedback to help get us where we are today. And we are going to keep this pretty brief on the background so that we can focus more on the recommendations later on. As a reminder, this plan is utilizing the US DOT Safe System approach, which emphasizes that death and serious injury are unacceptable. The project components included a traffic safety analysis, outreach, mapping a high injury network, developing countermeasures, and providing recommendations. Moving into the crash data, careless and distracted driving contributes to 87% of all crashes and 74% of severe outcome crashes. 74% of crashes are related to intersections, and 85% of severe outcome crashes are a result of 6 types: fixed object, right angle, approach turn, rear end, pedestrian, and bicycle. We completed a number of engagement events. In total, 850 unique comments were received from internal and external stakeholders, plus the public. Infrastructure-related concerns were often related to bicycle and vehicle conflict points or inadequate pedestrian crossings, and behavioral concerns were most related to speeding or aggressive driving. And so I hope that jogged your memory a bit, and I'll pass it over to Alicia to talk about some recommendations.
Hello, Council. Alicia Zimmerman with Fox Tuttle. Thank you for having me here. I am going to talk, as Bryce mentioned, thank you, Bryce, about the recommendations, which many of these haven't been presented in detail here before. So we're going to get a little bit more in depth, but a note that while I touch on the types of recommendations and some of the details, generally how we got here, time doesn't allow me to get too in depth and nerd out about it. So the full list and description is provided in your packet, in the report, and in the appendices if you want to get into more detail. And we're happy to answer questions as well. All right. First of all, this image is from a table we've developed that categorizes every intersection in Broomfield by something we're called excess crash costs. Also shows CDOT LOSS there, which is level of service of safety. Excess crash cost, we talked last time about how it was calculated, but really what it represents is locations where there are a greater number of crashes than we would expect for that intersection kind of configuration, as well as the number of cars going through that intersection and things like that. It also represents where improvements could make the greatest impact because of that. So what's shown specifically in this image is the top 10 ranked intersections in Broomfield by excess crash costs, as well as kind of the next 15, just different ways of categorizing them. And you'll notice that they show CDOT and Broomfield intersections or along the same area. So we used this list to help develop help decide which intersections we were going to go out and do road safety audits at, which is, we call them RSAs. Those focus in basically on infrastructure improvements and figuring out how to fix specific, locational problems. RSAs include a site visit with a team, including traffic, transportation planners and engineers from CCOB, as well as police department. And in some cases for the CDOT one, CDOT. So we had a pretty big crew out there for 2 full half days. We looked not only at large improvements at the locations we went to do RSAs at, but also kind of specific nuance tweaks that could help make some improvements as well, make an impact. And lastly, you can see at the top that the intersections, as I mentioned, are located on CDOT. A lot of the top 10s are CDOT. More of the next 15s are Broomfield. And so we're going to talk a little bit about we've split those out because we heard from you last time that that was important to focus on Broomfield intersections while we still can't, ignore the CDOT side of things as well. So trying to figure out how to balance that road safety audit approach. All right. A number of these top intersections on the CDOT-owned locations already have a project or a study going on through CDOT or through another organization. And so rather than develop our own specific recommendations because things are changing either physically in the field or there's a plan going on, our recommendation at those locations is just that staff stay on top of them, keep monitoring for trends, and stay very, very involved in those projects so that they can make sure that the concerns that we identified with this plan are addressed through those projects. So that kind of takes one group off of the CDOT list. The next one, the remainder of the CDOT-owned locations that we did RSAs at initially are 287 in Miramonte, Nickel at 287, WADS and Interlochen Loop, and 120th at Main. And you can see these location map notes on the map there. So those are the CDOT locations where we did the RSAs. And I'm just going to give you one specific example of a type of recommendation that we've made in these. One example is on Wadsworth between 36 off-ramp and Interlochen Loop, which is 128. The recommendation there was to perform a formal weaving analysis because there are a higher than usual number of side swipes crashes. So that just gives you kind of a taste of what type of recommendations we're looking at. So this is Broomfield-owned intersections now. Broomfield intersections where road safety audits were performed and where we had specific recommendations because of where they fell are 144th and Lowell, Flatiron Crossing at Interlochen Loop northbound ramps, and then Flatiron Crossing on the other side of that overpass at Interlochen Boulevard. These locations were chosen not just because of where they ranked on the list, since some of the Broomfield ones were a little bit lower that we chose, but they were also chosen because of basically some type of trend that we noticed that we thought was potentially correctable. An example of the recommendations we have on these ones are at Interlochen Boulevard and Flatiron Crossing, that last, it's the most left location we have there. There's a pedestrian crash trend there, which is obviously a major concern because those often end in, bodily injury and severe outcome crashes. One of the things that we noticed during the probably are familiar with from being in that area is there are unusual crosswalk locations and configurations. This is actually the case throughout that, Interlochen area. And that may be contributing to those crashes. So the recommendation for that specific location is initially revising the right turn slip lanes into potentially more of a conventional crossing type, a conventional corner, and potentially raising those crosswalks. Other recommendations on that type of intersection could be protected phasing timings, meaning you can't turn left at the same time. You'd get a red left arrow if a pedestrian was crossing, so you can't have those conflicts. Retroreflective backplates, which is just making signal heads more visible, and intersection geometry changes, as well as considering pork chop islands if they're in the right spot. So just one example of one specific location at the Broomfield-owned recommendations, or Broomfield-owned intersections. So it's easy just to focus on those infrastructure elements, just making those changes to the roadways or to operations, but non-infrastructure recommendations can make just as big of a difference, although they're a little bit harder to track and monitor because they're usually citywide or cultural shifts. So these recommendations listed here, 2 different slides, vary a lot in timeline to implement, coordination, and costs. The resources that we put in here are truly a best estimate. It can vary a lot depending on how you approach these. So additionally, this list isn't prioritized in order. We picked the priority non-infrastructure recommendations, but then put them in just kind of a general order so staff can use it as is most applicable to their current needs or their current funding. So going down the list quickly, we have Safe System website and dashboard launch. This is where crash trend details and the crash locations are available on a website for anybody, including you, including the public, to see. Next one is Interagency Safety Coordination Council. This could be a follow-up from some of our stakeholder involvement that we had with some interagency folks to make sure that there's kind of a continuation to the conversation on traffic safety and to hear new concerns across the board through schools and, you know, police department and everybody. And it could be held 1 or 2 times a year. Next one is refining the first responder crash documentation. And that is literally when the first responder is in the field and documenting the crash, are the, you know, the form fields right? Is the process right? So that that can then come back and be entered into the database in a way that doesn't have to get analyzed all the way again by, in this case, it was, you know, consultants spending a lot of time trying to interpret those. So just cleaning that up in a productive way. And the last one on this one is the critical emergency route system documentation. This is really to ID the most important routes to make sure that we keep those, you know, open and the most usable way, but also the policy around balancing response times versus everyday speeds. Because those two do need to be balanced. We can't just go off of reducing everyday speeds to a safe speed. We can't just go off of making sure emergency vehicles can go through as quickly as possible. Second half of these non-infrastructure ones, the signal timing policy document is basically developing a document that formalizes the policy on many of the nuanced signal operation type things, flashing yellow arrow use versus protected turns, or a leading pedestrian interval that gives pedestrians a little bit of a head start at the intersection. Then the last 3 on here are development of pedestrian crossing treatment guideline. Same idea, it's a guideline for uniformity across the community that we heard quite a bit about. This is maybe one of the ones we heard the most about from the public. It'll help identify the crossing treatments, both where, if they should be established at a certain location, and then if they are shown to be an established need there, what it should look like, right? A rectangular rapid flashing beacon versus just striping and signage or something like that. Second to last, policy on roundabout consideration and implementation. We heard a lot about this from the public, and this is basically to dig through to figure out where and when roundabouts should be considered. You know, the lower hanging fruit is in new intersections and things like that. And then you might end up talking about like where retrofits might be necessary, but I know that that can be funding challenge too. So just making policy decisions based on those. And lastly, traffic safety cameras for automated enforcement. And I know there's been discussion about that. This could include both speeding enforcement or red light running enforcement. And this is not saying go with this. It is saying think about it more in order to develop a policy that works for Broomfield's needs, right? So the next step is to work on that policy. And the last thing I have here is just that we also developed the safety countermeasures toolbox. And that is for any new locations that come up after this plan is adopted, or any reprioritized, you know, locations that have been reprioritized to be a higher priority. We have X challenge, we have X safety crash concern. What type of treatment do we look at? And this is just a quick summary of it, but there's a much more in-depth spreadsheet that basically says, start looking at these things. Here's how you study it. And here are some of the countermeasures that we expect would make a difference here. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Bryce to talk about goals.
All right, thank you, Alicia. And I know we went through the goals last time, so I am gonna jump through this. It is in the presentation, so you can see it if you want to. We did tie strategies from the recommendations to our goals, and we are planning on submitting an annual report. And as a reminder, our vision is that no one is seriously injured or killed while using the transportation network in Broomfield. And our mission is that Broomfield commits to eliminating traffic-related fatalities by 2040 and serious injuries by 2045 on Broomfield-owned roadways, with an eventual goal of 0 on all roadways, including CDOT highways. So we are requesting that council to approve resolution 2025-135 to adopt Broomfield's Transportation Safety Action Plan, which includes the vision and mission. And I think this is an important slide. So while we go through questions and comments, I'll leave this up here and encourage everybody to read it. Safety needs to be a shared value from the entire community, and this plan aims to put us towards that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We will now proceed with public comments. If any residents are using the call-in service, they should indicate their desire to speak by pressing *9 to raise their hand. We will start with in-person comments. Does anyone would like to be heard? Please come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing no one, anybody joining us from the phone? And no one on phone. So we will turn to council questions. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. The time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. We'll start off with Councilmember Leslie.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for your presentation. Would you go back to the previous slide, I think, where you had the vision statement? You kind of went through it very quickly and I wasn't able to read it. Was it 1 or 2 slides back?
I can't get the clicker to work here. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Is this the right
The
slide?
vision is no one is seriously injured or killed.
Yep.
You commit to eliminating traffic-related fatalities by 2040 and serious injuries by 2045. Eventual goal of 0 on all roadways, including CDOT highways. A little more vague on the CDOT side of things.
Yep.
Obviously, understandably so.
Yeah,
You
we
don't have
definitely
a whole lot of
acknowledge.
control there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. But I do appreciate the clarity over setting date and timelines to do this. I think that's really important. It would be great if you could create a dashboard that could over time show the council progress being made. In fact, I would suggest it would be helpful if you could back that down so that by 2030 you'd had some progress towards that, what your goal is for that, 35, 40, something along those lines, so that there was a way not to wait for 2040 to know whether you've done it or not. From my experience, the more you can provide some specificity each year and then show progress or challenges that perhaps prevented progress from being achieved is a viable tool. So that would be my one recommendation coming out of this process. But I'm very impressed, very pleased, and I appreciated the detail over the selection of those intersections that are most problematic. And there was a moment where I thought I heard we're going to overlook the CDOT side of it, but then you went back and said, yeah, we're going to continue to work with CDOT because you can't just ignore them or the pedestrians that go through their intersections. So there is important. And the more you can do to get CDOT to kind of partner in this process, you know that already, the more likelihood that we're going to be able to get those intersections addressed as well. But I really appreciate this initiative and I want to compliment the team on that. But I would recommend you come up with a dashboard with more specificity from now until 2040, 2045, so we can see and you can see and show what you're doing and the progress that's being achieved. Not only to us, but to the citizens. I mean, that's really the point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next for our council question portion is Councilmember Rush Holston.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Second, what Councilmember Leslie just said about the, keeping track of it and specificity and the metrics we can look at. I do have a few questions. Some of them are my own, some of them are forwarded on to me by residents who have spoken about this issue. First of all, why the decision to only focus on those 3 Broomfield-owned intersections? I'm looking at the map, the accident map, and I see that there was a fatality on Midway, one on Sheridan, one on Main. Those are Broomfield-owned intersections. I guess why the decision to only focus on those 3 and not on more?
Yep. So our goal is to do or is to continue this program. So we're not just going to stop with these road safety audits. We're going to continue to do them as the years go on. So our idea is to do similar thing. We tried to do 3 on Broomfield, 3 on CDOT this last year. So in the next year, we will then identify, further intersections. There was a selection that went into or a process that went into that selection. One was, is it ranked high in the top 10 list? And then 2, is there a trend that we can find? Some of the Broomfield ones were a little bit further down the list, so we couldn't just straight up go for that top 10, which is why we, looked at some trends, side swipes, pedestrian crashes, rear ends, approach turn crashes. Those all went into the decision making for that.
Okay, thank you. I assume that was the case. And I will, one of the number one concerns I get from Ward 1 residents is Midway and Lowell, both. And so is the Midway, we're still moving forward with the Midway multimodal plan. And I'm assuming traffic safety is part of that, correct?
Yep, definitely. So the design is being planned to kick off in 2026. Construction might not be for a few years after that. But yeah, we are continuing with the plan, and traffic safety, pedestrian safety is all going to be included in that.
Right. Thank you. And I saw one of the potential, go back and find it. One of the potential action items is automated cameras. Talk a little bit more about what that will look like, the process, and when we can expect anything.
I might defer that question.
Because that is one of those questions I get from residents on speed, especially.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Commander Witchlaws with Broomfield Police. We did look at this 2 years ago. Council had made a mention of it, and Chief directed us to take a look at it and see what that entails. It's a long process. So we've talked to 2 different vendors. Right up front, they say there's no upfront cost. We know that's not going to be completely true because we know there's going to be FTE that goes with it. But ultimately, the goal is for them to be self-sustaining, and so ultimately to pay for that on their own. First thing, we'd have to create an ordinance. If that's the direction we get to move forward with this, is state law. We have to have an ordinance, and then we'll have to create an internal policy as well. Then decide what type of cameras we want, whether we want red light, speed cameras, both. And then obviously using this information and continued data, deciding where those locations are. And that will dictate everything beyond that point, because one intersection may self-sustain itself for a while, but most of the agencies around us have multiple cameras and different systems. So it's a long process.
Are those cameras stationary, fixed to a pole, or can you move them to different locations?
All of the above. So they have options either way. Most places have a mix of that.
So if council wanted to move forward with those, what would be the next steps on?
Next step would be us and staff looking at creating an ordinance to bring to council to approve it. And that will dictate our next steps. And then obviously the request for bid process with vendors and everything else.
Okay. Thank you. And then one final question, I believe probably for Attorney Rogers. I had a resident reach out to me today when we were talking about this and asked if his concern was about speeding, specifically about the speeds that people go in Broomfield. He wanted to know if it would be possible for us to increase the penalties for speeding within Broomfield substantially enough to make an impact, in his words. I wasn't sure if we had the authority under state law to go up with higher fines and et cetera for those things.
We can increase the fines on some of the, but we can't increase the speeds on a lot of the roads.
I think he was specifically talking about the fines. Like he in his opinion, the fines for speeding were too low and weren't a sufficient disincentive.
So there's a couple different types of fine. When you're talking about automated traffic cameras, there are limitations on the type of fines. When you're talking about an officer who issues a ticket and the person has to go to municipal court, then we look at the model traffic code that council will adopt in 2026, and that has a fine schedule. So that's where council could increase the fines for traffic
I
tickets.
thought I remember somewhere that there was some maximum amount we could do under state law.
There is definitely maximums on the amount of traffic violations, but there is some space within those maximums.
Okay.
And especially when you're talking about automated type of fines, those are really limited and pretty low.
Here's a question that just popped into my head that I thought of before. You have European countries that base the fine amount for some traffic violations based upon the offender's income? Because somebody making, $1 million a year, a $100 fine doesn't hit them as much as somebody making $50,000 a year? Is that something we have the legal authority to do in Colorado?
It's a loaded question.
If you don't have the answer, that's
See,
fine, yeah.
I will say, my first thought is that is super challenging to manage because we don't have that data. So when a person comes in and arguably the judge already does that type of analysis when she meets with somebody and issues a fine. But to do that in a way that would be tied to a specific process that if you make over this amount, you get this fine, we'd have to, we need another ERP module
Okay,
to get that data.
thank you. That's all I have, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you so much, staff, for this presentation and the kind of moving forward with this. I remember seeing this at the Transportation Forum meeting. I do have a couple questions about kind of projects in general, but also kind of policy at large. So projects in general, obviously two of the high recommendations for Broomfield infrastructure are located over in Flatirons Crossing Mall Interlochen area. Have we had conversations with Macerich in particular about kind of these trends that we're seeing in that area, especially as the mall is undergoing a redevelopment, and what physical changes look like for them moving forward?
We have not been in contact with Macerich about what trends we've found, but that's certainly something that we can do. Meet with them and show them our plan and what we found at those particular intersections.
I would also add that one of the reasons a few of those intersections were kind of bumped up in priority, both the trends that happened, but also because some of the recommendations and the monitoring of whether those recommendations result in outcomes could be used to help some of the other intersections in the area that haven't had the crash trend, but have a potential for it. But so that potential as a model was one of the reasons those kind of rose up in the RSA locations.
Okay, great. Excuse me. In terms of, just kind of gonna say something, having lived in that area now for, God, how many years now? 7? Yes, 7 years. I certainly can attest to the fact that Flatirons Crossing, Interlochen, all of the Interlochens, Boulevard, Loop, Crescent, you name it. We've probably named it Interlochen something, are basically raceways. Especially now post-pandemic, there's not high volumes of traffic, particularly when the times that I'm out there, and I am out there at all times of the day. One of my questions that kind of goes on along with that is, in these trends, are we seeing specific times of day where these accidents are occurring, either the serious injury and or fatalities?
I guess I will first maybe address the first part of the question about it being raceways, and especially since the pandemic, there being a little bit less traffic. One of our recommendations is a road diet study. So reducing a lane to maybe try and relieve that situation, I guess. And then in relation to the crash trends, time of day, it was really difficult to try and find trends along those lines. the ones that we picked out for the road safety audit were rare. It seemed to be, and this is one of the things that I learned most going through this process, was that it didn't seem like there was necessarily an infrastructure trend where we could pick out certain locations. It was more so programmatic. You know, we could do a large infrastructure project, but some of those same crashes might just show up at the intersection next door that we didn't get to yet. So I think that was one of the things that I learned the most, and that it is difficult to find specific trends as from intersection to intersection and whatnot.
Okay. Do we have data though as to what time these accidents are occurring? And we track that data?
Yep,
Okay.
we do. It is filterable in our database.
Okay, that's great. And I do appreciate you recognizing that intersection or little projects along the route, while great for that one particular place, I think looking holistically at the area itself is much more applicable to increasing safety for just everyone in general, cars, pedestrians, bikes, etc. There was a comment made from our other presenter from Fox Tuttle about the need for balancing between safety and kind of speed, if I remember you saying that correctly. Am I correct with?
Gotcha. Yep. So I believe you're talking about the need to work with our emergency responders to allow them appropriate turning radiuses at intersections, allow them the movement and ability to get to where they need to go, but at the same time designing for the everyday user around Broomfield, I guess.
Okay. Have we initiated those conversations?
Yep. Yeah, so just as an example, well, I will say one, all of our emergency responders were stakeholders as a part of this process. We had a dedicated meeting with emergency responders, and then they were also included in our external stakeholders group. And then as an example of or something that we're already doing is with our traffic mitigation program. We're working with them around designs. We just created a detail for a raised crosswalk as an example. So working with them on what slope they need the crosswalk to be at, how high it can be, so that their response times aren't as impacted.
Okay. Kind of a question on that as someone who drives a commercial vehicle. Boulder has done a lot of work in putting in like speed cushions or raised crosswalks, etc. And I more frequently notice people just ignore them basically, and they'll just take whatever damage may or may not come from going over those bumps quickly. And so I just anecdotally have a concern that those may not be doing the trick that we're trying to accomplish, even though an alternative might be worse off for emergency response times. How are we having those conversations with emergency services, either police, fire, ambulance, etc.?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a battle. Whenever on any project, really, we have what we're trying to do from a transportation perspective against what they are trying to do. And I think both sides are trying to work with the other one. We don't want to be the ones that, during an emergency cause that delay that could mean life or death. And they don't want to be the ones that hinder a design to make it safer. So there is some compromise. Another example is on the Third Ave design that we've been working on. We wanted it to be a pedestrian-friendly area, so we wanted to bring the curbs in, reduce those the pedestrian crossing distances, reduce speeds when vehicles are turning. And the fire department recognized that. And so we came up with a design for mountable bump outs that allowed them to use their fire apparatus at those turns while we still were able to reduce the everyday passenger vehicles turn speeds while reducing those crossing distances.
Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar with those as well, driving a bus in Boulder. I
they
do
work
have to
well?
use them. I'm going to follow up on the statement you made about doing a road diet in Flatiron Crossing. What is that process going to look like in terms of that study?
Yep. So it's definitely right now it's a recommendation to do the study. So the process is, so it's not like, okay, hire somebody to do design for that. So when we do a study for that, we would look at current traffic volumes, projected traffic volumes, speeds, cross section, and we would review all that and determine what we want to see for the corridor from a transportation perspective, bringing in our stakeholders to see, within the city, other departments, talking to external stakeholders, seeing what they want to see for the corridor, and ultimately coming together with a proposal for design
Okay.
if it progresses to that.
So kind of all of that work is, let's say, theoretical. It's kind of just you're collecting data, you're sending it through, I assume, some mathematical equations before we even get to attempting something, correct?
Yeah. Yep. We definitely want to make sure that, especially for a project like that, that could potentially be, depending on how we do it, it could be a larger project. We want to make sure we're making the right decision and that we're not going to be having to backtrack on that.
Okay.
Future. Yeah.
I mean, I have no issue. I think it's great to involve stakeholders. It's absolutely needed, especially with like Macerich in that area, just in particular, is they're the big thing that's drawing people there. I think my concern though is we focus too much on this planning and kind of these numbers, and sometimes I don't think that actually pans out as to what happens in real life, like with the, speed cushions instead of a speed bump. People just driving over it faster because it doesn't feel that bad. Have we contemplated just doing like we did on, was it 6th Avenue, I think, where we did like flexible bollards to take away a lane temporarily just to see how traffic deals with that, but it's a temporary and very cheap solution that can be removed very quickly if it deemed that that was not the appropriate solution.
Yeah. I think pilots like that are a wonderful idea. Something that we don't have in Broomfield currently is traffic circles. But Denver has tons of them. I worked on some of them when I was in Denver. And that is one example of something that can be done pretty inexpensive with like FlexPost as an example. So looking at that, a pilot study is something that we could definitely consider.
Okay, thank you. That is it for my time right now.
Thank you, Councilmember Ward. We will turn to Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you for the presentation, Mr. Hamilton. I really appreciate the mission statement, the amount of effort that you and your team have done for addressing the streets, especially our roads. I only have one question, and it pertains to street racing. Our chief of police had a presentation talking about the street racing craze that's been happening in Broomfield for the past few months. Obviously, in the memo itself, we had talked, or y'all had wrote about how reckless driving involving deliberate acts such as excessive speeding, evading police, and high-speed weaving that leads to crashes is 3% of all crashes, but 15% of severe injury and fatal crashes. And so I guess how does the safety action plan addresses the, reckless driving?
Yep. So I think this one, in my opinion, one of the things that we really need to look at is overall, because this isn't happening in like a single location. Like I was just mentioning, it's all over Broomfield. So when we're looking at that, we need to be looking at what policies can we implement. And I think for example, the automated vehicle enforcement could be something that we identify in the plan. that could make people start thinking about that. So yeah, I think, yeah, that's definitely a valid point, and we need to be looking at aggressive driving and speeding.
Yeah, and I appreciate the presentation with the collaboration effort with the police department itself, first responders, the metro districts. So I think this is a good plan overall, and I appreciate your time and your presentation. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Wanted to follow up sort of something that Councilmember Ward was touching on. Sometimes these traffic measures don't seem all that effective. I have a traffic cushion in my neighborhood that seems to have no effect. And it was more philosophical question because in your report, you say like 86% of these accidents happen at intersections. And a lot of the remedies are lights and turn lanes. But I'm just curious, and I know it's more expensive, but roundabouts, for example, are statistically cut traffic accidents down massively. It's perhaps the most effective way to cut intersection crashes. So why not lean into an action plan to create more roundabouts, since they are probably hundreds of times more effective than a light change?
Yep. So we do identify as one of our top recommendations to look at a policy for installation of roundabouts. I definitely agree that they, especially the severe outcome crashes, they are great at reducing when compared to signals. You might wind up with more like side swipe crashes or rear ends, but the right angle crashes are really reduced, which is really important. And yeah, I think that's something that transportation staff is really wanting to push, and we have the recommendation in the plan. And I think moving forward, we should be considering roundabouts as an alternative to traffic signals.
I mean, is there a way to get roundabouts in action together, bring forth a robust plan that, hey, we're going to start transitioning these intersections, not just for safety, but also just traffic flow? I spent a lot of time sitting at lights where you see people speeding to get through light. There's another challenge because they don't want to sit there, and that causes more accidents. So I see a lot of nibbling around the edges, quite honestly. Is there interest on your side and passion in terms of the traffic? Just let's go full bore and do roundabouts.
There's definitely interest. And yeah, in terms of if it's a new project, that's something that we're definitely considering. When we're looking at like retrofits to existing intersections, that's another discussion.
For your high high intersections where you've seen lots of crashes,
yep.
Wouldn't we see our number? You'd get a lot closer, a lot faster to that zero goal if we just started. If we put in 10 roundabouts, wouldn't you say that we'd make massive progress toward reducing traffic accidents in Broomfield?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, I would encourage us to get aggressive on that because it seems like we're, as I said, nibbling a little bit about the edges. I appreciate that these changes will help, but there may be the changes will be incremental in the long run. And then a related question, there's references throughout the report to enforcement. So I'm just in terms of cost, would it be even more effective if we just had more police officers? Because I think probably we all hear that. If there only was a cop here, that person wouldn't have gone through the red light, they wouldn't have speed, they wouldn't have cut me off. Would the presence of more police officers patrolling Broomfield cost effectively reduce traffic accidents more than having to invest in more infrastructure?
So I'll give my thoughts, and maybe Commander Witchlatz wants to chime in as well. But they definitely having a visible enforcement officer definitely will help. But from a cost standpoint, it may not be, and we don't necessarily have all the details on this, but it may not be more cost effective because the amount of areas where we have speeding, they're still going to need to be jumping around. They're not going to be there, able to be there all the time.
But if the perception is that if you drive through Broomfield, you're going to see a cop, and you're going to slow down because Broomfield's a high enforcement zone.
That's a good point.
And I mean, we all know where the speed traps are when you cross into Wyoming, by the way. They'll get you. But I mean, I don't know the cost, whether, it costs a lot to have more officers, but I hear that from residents all the time. We've increased cops. They don't necessarily see more cops because we have special enforcement units, but I hear that request all the time. Why can't we have more cops on the street? Because I'm seeing people speed or almost cut me off or almost run me over all the time. More rhetorical, unless you have a response.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think your question is exactly the question that you have to ask at each stage of it. With X problem, is additional enforcement presence going to make enough of a difference to, make the cost worth it? And from an engineering perspective, there are still things yet to be done on the roadways in Broomfield that can make a difference all the time. And so while we don't ignore the enforcement piece, you can see it's definitely present in the plan. We try and focus those in the most effective places and manners of application, and then bring in the education, outreach, all that stuff, but also the engineering piece of roundabouts, for example, that can make a difference all the time without having to have a cop there. So I think it's a balance, just like anything. It's not the only answer, but it's definitely not ignored.
No, I'm just wondering if the patrol office is just curious whether that reputationally just will create diversion, will deter people from speeding in Broomfield and paying more attention.
Right.
Councilmember Marsh-Olson's thinking, well, let's raise the fines. But the fines only happen if we have police to see the infractions.
Right. Like if you're going through Empire on the way to Winter Park, like
We all know
nobody's right.
where we
Yeah.
need to slow down.
Right.
It's just known. So that's my response is that, I mean, I think there's some wiggle room in your report and it's extensive. But the really thing that struck out to me, looking at research about roundabouts and having driven through Europe, and there's just one roundabout after another, and you just keep going. But the statistics say that they just cut traffic accidents down massively because you don't have the fatal accidents are usually head on, right? And you don't have those on roundabouts. And you don't have even as many pedestrian issues as well. So anyway, my philosophy is I think we should, I know there's a community, I forget the name of it, here in Colorado that's adopted that they're going to just go all roundabouts in their community, and they're doing it. And I just would encourage us to think, if you think that would get you close to your goal by 2035 instead of 2040, let's do that. And please bring that to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cohen. Councilmember Henkel, and then Lim.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, staff, for your presentation. Sorry I had to miss the very beginning of it. I was heading home. Wanted to ask you about on the safety action plan on the final draft. I think it was on the digital page of 42. It just kind of talks about CDOT versus Broomfield roadways. This is where a lot of the concern out of our ward comes into play. It looks like 50% of Broomfield serious injury or fatal crashes occur on CDOT roadways. Noted here are a lot in Ward 5, so 144th in Lowell, 136th in Zuni. Sheridan and 144th is more Ward 3, but Midway and Lowell, and then Sheridan and 136. So we're just really sort of, seeing a lot of CDOT issues, and I'm realizing I think that the 287 and Dillon intersection is not necessarily Broomfield jurisdiction, but I would like to at least be engaged with that intersection. And then also, what does that engagement look like with CDOT to improve the safety?
Yeah, I will say that we do work with CDOT. Myself on a lot of day-to-day issues with traffic concerns. Oftentimes people reach out to us instead of CDOT, and then we have to make that communication. So we do have the contacts and ability to go about making those kind of day-to-day changes. And something that Sarah works a lot on is the long-term transportation planning. with CDOT and other jurisdictions. And yeah, so we do have those contacts and the ability to make suggestions. While we may not have the final authority, our say, I would say, does matter.
Okay. Thank you. If there's any way that we could have something added to our calendar. So if CDOT does, I know we've done this once before in the past, I think month or two, where we really did engage with CDOT as city council members if we wanted to come to it. I would love to have that added to our calendar so that we can kind of weigh in on a few of these intersections on what might help, and then we can ask others to also weigh in as well. Thank you. I think that's all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Henkel. Councilmember Lim.
Out of the recommendations from Fox Tuttle, there's a note at the end of the memo that says staff has chosen to go forward initially with 2 of those recommendations. Am I understanding that right? That they will go forward with the study for the transportation safety cameras for automated enforcement? Is that?
So that's something that we can do. As the commander mentioned, there would be next steps to doing that. One thing that we are currently working on is a pedestrian crossing guide, which I know we've mentioned in maybe a couple emails to some of you. And that's one thing that we've known was going to show up in the recommendations for a while. So we started on that a little bit early, so that we could get a jump start on that. And that's one thing that I know we are currently working on.
Okay. Well, I understood it. I don't know how to have the memo in front of me. I understood from the memo that there were 2 things.
Yeah, potentially, if we go back to the slides, I can show you something else that we have. That's a good. So if you go towards the end, okay, so back one more maybe right there. Okay, so this is this shows an image of what our crash dashboard looks like right now, which is live. So maybe that is something else that is recommended. We're still working on this. There's still like improvements that can be made. Right now, it is, I would say the best thing for Broomfield is one, the transparency and the ease of access to this crash data. Anybody can look at it. It's on our website. It's really easy to use and understand. And then for our crash reporting, every year we are going to have an annual report, and we're going to be documenting what the fatal and serious injury crashes look like over time. And this dashboard has the ability, as you can see up there, to just filter that automatically for us. So, you've seen those graphs with the data points of crashes. And that's something that we're going to be developing. And this is going to be key to that development. And while the graph is not in this dashboard yet, that is something that we do plan on revamping at some point.
No, I just want to, thank you, Councilmember Anderson. I brought up the memo quicker than I did. So on page 20, it says, recommendations that are expected to be underway in 2026 include the crossing treatment guide and early research for automated vehicle enforcement.
Yes. Yep. So that was something that we were expecting a lot of discussion on that. So in 2026, that, if it is directed to us, we would take an ordinance, as the commander said, to look at that automated vehicle enforcement.
I mean, I would follow through on that and say I have had several residents ask about the traffic enforcement with the automated means. So I'm certainly going to support going forward with that study. I mean, it's, as I understand it, the commander presented that it would be an elongated study necessarily for various reasons. So, but I'm all in favor with after hearing from my residents that they would like that to move forward in some way. So I would support that. My question about the crossing treatment guide, the recommendation itself from Fox Tuttle said that it would take 60 hours of staff time if the consultant completes the document. But my understanding is that we are doing the crossing treatment guide. Is that correct?
No, we are having a consultant do that.
We are having a consultant do that. Okay, so is that budgeted for 2026?
So we are actually underway in that now.
Okay.
We have a traffic safety fund. Right now it's called Traffic Mitigation Fund. In 2026, it's going to be renamed to the Traffic Safety Fund. Our idea is to try to repurpose some of those funds to be able to knock out some of the recommendations of this report.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that explanation.
Thank you, Councilmember Lim. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. And I just have a couple left here. One of the ones I was going to flag that Councilmember Henkel already noted was that intersection of 287 and Dillon. I was surprised when that wasn't on there. And then if you look really close at the map, you can see it's just outside our jurisdiction. So I think that appreciate the focus on making sure that's highlighted, because that is I see that as one of the most dangerous intersections that we drive on a regular basis. So I also want to put some support behind I'm glad we're starting the research for the automated vehicle enforcement. That's come up a multitude of times, and I don't know what's going on these last couple of years, but there are so many people running red lights. It's like they're not even, it's just becoming a habitual thing now at some of these intersections. So I think that could go a long ways, and also maybe in the some of the speed racing. So that'd be interesting, and I'm hoping that that the research shows that those fines that we collect will cover the cost of it, and we can hopefully make a huge dent in some of those incidents. But the only other one I was going to touch on was the pedestrian crossing treatment. And what I'm seeing is, and I'm assuming this is going to start to apply for all the new development, because I'm like looking at new development that's just going in, and Sheridan and Pikes Peak. That's like one of these intersections, just put it in, and they've got these tall grasses growing up, and it's become, that one's flagged on there's line of sight. And then some of the more existing, the one that just frustrates people are these, the pedestrian crossings. A couple of them are on Pikes Peak. There's the same way, similar on Midway and other places where they've landscaped them so heavily. You can't see the kids. So I hope that there's a thought in there to go in and start to unlandscape some of those areas, just for the sake of visibility, because the one that I'm thinking of on Pikes Peak is one of the most dangerous ones, because you're coming up on the school, can't see anything, because you just have to slow down every morning when there's kids present, because not everybody hits that light, and those trees are totally masking the crosswalk. So I hope there's a thought in there to go in and remove some of that landscaping for the sake of the kids and the crossing. And that is, there's just a lot of information here. I don't think I actually have a question on that one. So appreciate all this, the effort, and I do support the plan and look forward to the data and hopefully seeing a downward trend. And I'm glad the residents can start to see it too, that it'll be visible in the transparency of the data. So thank you for all of this work.
Thank you. Any other council members for a first round? First round? All right, let me ask my question, then we'll go to second round. So my first question is there's a lot of space for staff to play within this in terms of the implementation of this plan. But what are the most impactful ways for the public to assist in achieving the vision and mission of this safety action plan?
Yep. So we definitely want to stay engaged and keep people engaged. You know, as the final slide here showed, you know, this is going to be a shared effort. So we want to make ourselves available as a number one. And then we also want to communicate what they can be doing. So it's what staff can do and what the community members can do. So we want to make ourselves available to communicate to them the importance of traffic safety, the importance to drive the posted speed limit, things along those lines.
Okay. You had also pointed out the driving free of distractions. And it seems like that's not just a Broomfield message. That's not just state of Colorado message. That's, you know, a countrywide message as the distracted driving is continuing to increase with the more technology that is available in cars as well as on persons such as mobile phones and things like that.
Yeah. I think there's educational campaigns that we can work towards to try and target distracted driving. And in fact, communications reach out to me about doing an educational campaign, not necessarily for distracted driving, but for how to navigate green bike lanes. And, you know, I think that just shows an example of what type of collaboration we can use within the city to be able to reach the community.
I appreciate that.
I just wanted to add one thing on how can the public help as well? We talked early in this process about that and how, you know, the public personally committing to improving their own travel behavior. I mean, I do this for a living and I still have to stop myself and go, wait, you know, why do I have my phone? That type of thing. But this step of adopting a plan and adopting something that could be a major change and is a basis that staff can use moving forward is important. But it gets harder when a project starts using some of the policies that are adopted and it makes something a harder decision, you know, at the project implementation level or at the corridor study level. And so the community coming out and supporting and recognizing that those hard decisions need to be backed by community voices can make a big difference to help support staff make those hard decisions that they need to make. So just from an outside perspective to help support your staff to make those changes in Broomfield.
Thank you for that addition. It kind of leads to my next question, which is around the achieving the funding goals, you know, of this. So that I think that, you know, it probably didn't get pointed out well enough, but there is a small amount of funding for the Transportation Safety Fund. I believe that's the name, or maybe I totally got it wrong, but I think it's a couple $100,000 a year. So we're not talking about a lot of money. We would have to save multiple years in order to even complete one roundabout. I think the goal is to grow this to 2 to 5% of the annual resurfacing budget. But I think that, you know, if we are to achieve that, we have to either create some additional revenue or start to earmark funds, which I know for 2026, there aren't available funds. So what are those ways in which we are going to achieve those goals of that 2 to 5% growth of that fund?
Yeah, that's a good observation. There's definitely still a lot of work to be done there. You know, there's one thing that this plan does do is it provides a framework for us to have established in a plan a recommendation that we can then go after grant funding for various grants. I don't know how that's going to look though in the coming years. But that's always something that us as transportation professionals look towards. And then there is an opportunity to go after some of those larger projects in the CIP outside of the Transportation Safety Fund. Of course, it would be reviewed by you all. And yeah, I do agree though, there's still work to be done to be able to fund all of the recommendations here.
Well, I appreciate the best that you've done with the little amount of funds that are there. It sounds like the council does have some desires to allocate more money here. I think that, you know, within our budget exploration, I think that is something that we need to have a conversation about. So Section 18s, I think, or Section 8s, I think are going to be a tool that's probably going to be used. I think that we heard, you know, about roundabouts. We've heard, you know, automated cameras, things like that. So I think that those conversations are probably going to be had probably after December. right after I'm done on council. But I think that, anytime we're thinking of these new initiatives, new monies, new FTEs, things like this, I think that we've got to talk about, what is that future planning going to look like? And we have to think beyond just this next year and this next budget cycle. So I hope that, in this conversation about this funding, that we realize that there is such a little amount of funding that exists here, and the idea to grow this a little bit bigger, it's going to have to come from somewhere or new revenue. So I think that those are big conversations to be had in 2026. And at that, we will go to round number 2. Councilmember Marshallshin.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just a couple follow-up questions. One was texted to me by a resident while we were having the meeting, specifically related to the street racing. My understanding is that, and maybe this is for Attorney Rogers, I'm not sure, but my understanding is that Aurora recently enacted a proposal or an ordinance where they actually are seizing cars when when someone who's guilty, multiple times of street racing violations.
There's discussion. There have been some ordinance changes. There are options. That is actually, when I worked with Aurora, it was a tool that we looked in. There's a lot of complications with that model. And I think from an enforcement perspective, you're getting one car off the street. And the problem is 100 cars meeting at the time. So while yes, it is an option, and there are ways where we can draft an ordinance that passes Fourth Amendment seizure restrictions so we can grab cars. But I think the efficacy of that ordinance remains to be seen.
That was actually my next follow-up question is there any data yet on how effective those type of policies are to reducing? Maybe, and that's not a question to be answered tonight, maybe for a future discussion. I'm sure Aurora is not the only community that's done that. So maybe something for a future discussion.
Well, actually, Joe and I were just talking about this before. I don't know if you wanted to chime in. No. Okay. Basically, yeah, we were saying that the like automated vehicle enforcement, it hasn't been around long enough to be able to have some of that before and after data. So that's something that if we were to implement something like that, we would doing so without having that information.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And then the one last question, I was going to send this in an email, but since we're talking about this traffic, it is relevant. I had a resident approach me at Broomfield Days, specifically with concerns on Midway, just west of Sheridan, westbound traffic, and cars. They were communicating that cars were crossing over into the bike and parking lanes to pass slower. The cars that are actually going the speed limit. So they had some concerns about parking their cars on that parking lane. And so the question, I guess, is can we look at is there something like bollards or something like that that can, at least right there where it's first past Sheridan? So I'm not sure if that's something that's relevant to this or can fold into this. So that's my question.
Yeah, I would say for a specific location like that, that's definitely something that we can look into. If that was from a resident, I would encourage them to reach out to us directly. And we can definitely look into that.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Excellent. Thank you. Seeing no further questions, next is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2025-135. Will the clerk please read the proposed resolution by title?
Proposed resolution number 2025-135 to adopt the Broomfield Transportation Safety Action Plan.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution? Councilmember Ward?
So moved.
Is there a second? Councilmember Nguyen?
I second this motion.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, council, please cast your vote electronically. Councilmember Delgadillo, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
Councilmember Henkel, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
And Councilmember Cohen has left, so he is absent, I believe. And that means that all council members have entered their vote. The results will now be displayed on the screen, and that passes 9-0 unanimously. Thank you, council, and thank you so much for your work on this plan.
Thank you so much, everyone.
The final item under action items this evening is the public hearing and council's consideration on second reading of a proposed ordinance to public land dedication and other definitions related to open space and recreation facilities. I'll now declare the public hearing open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rose joining us tonight, the planning manager. And as council knows, this is the second reading, so it'll be a brief introduction and walkthrough. Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Again, Brandon Rowe, Planning Manager. Next slide, please. As Manager Hoffman had noted, this is the second reading, so I will not provide a full presentation since I did about a month ago during first reading, but we'll slide through or we'll skim through a few slides and hit some highlights. As a reminder, public land dedication is a critical component of new residential development within Broomfield to ensure proportional contributions of parks, open space, trails, and recreation infrastructure. Broomfield has limited regulations to PLD, which were originally adopted in 1987 and have largely been supplemented through policy through the Open Space Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan, and now just the Open Space Parks, Recreation and Trails Plan, OSPRT for short. Next slide, please. In 2024, Council approved the most recent update to the OSPRT plan. This included recommendations to modify the Broomfield Municipal Code to update the public land dedication related regulations and to make some additional sort of cleanup actions. Next slide, please. This slide provides a comprehensive and comparative view of the proposed approaches to the public land dedication included in the ordinance. That top row identifies the current PLD policy as established through the OSPRT plan. And then the following three rows outline the proposed approaches based on residential project type. For market rate units, the proposal is to mirror the current policy, which is that 25% of a project site needs to be on-site public land dedication. And then the remaining balance of public land dedication could be paid through cash in lieu, additional land dedications, off-site dedications, a number of other items. For 100% income aligned projects at 60% AMI, there are two sort of tracks, and it's based on the size of the lot. So those larger than 10 acres or those less than 10 acres. The split there is 15% for smaller lots, 20% for larger lots for on-site dedication. If they provide that on-site dedication and the project is 100% affordable at 60% or below AMI, the rest of the cash in lieu is waived. And then for mixed income, we follow that same sort of split, larger, small lots, 10 or 15 or 20%. The difference here being that there would be a reduction in cash in lieu obligation for public land dedication that's proportional to the number of units and the affordability rate. Next slide, please. This slide and the following slide identify those matrices that we discussed during the first reading that show the relationship between the proportion of affordable units on site in relation to the level of affordability. Really briefly on this slide, if somebody was proposing 80% of the units at 80% area median income, you sort of put your fingers on either side of the table and meet in the middle, and you're looking at a 50% eligible reduction for cash in lieu. And the next slide shows this exact same approach for the for sale products with the level of income adjusted for what is typical and matches our income aligned housing ordinance in the municipal code. Next slide, please. As mentioned, this does largely hit on public land dedication processes and policies, but there are some additional proposed changes. Some of the notable ones are that this ordinance would establish a process for smaller dedications, those typically 3 acres or less in size being maintained and owned privately rather than dedicated to Broomfield for ownership and maintenance. This is due to the fact that these smaller tracts do tend to be a bit of a challenge for parks maintenance to maintain because they're spread out so far. If an applicant wanted to use that as public land dedication, they could dedicate a permanent public access easement We have drafted that public access easement, so if council were to approve this ordinance this evening on second reading, once that goes into effect, we have that template available for developers to utilize. And it would follow a standard model that we use for other types of easements. We are also proposing to correct some terminology errors. The PUD and SDP regulations reference open space. It should be private open area. And then we're including a reduction in private open area for residential PUDs from 40% to 30%. This is aimed to help increase the number of units that can be provided on site. Assuming that a project was 10 acres or less than 10 acres, you're still looking at 15% on-site public land dedication plus 30% private open area. So you're still nearly at 50% of the site being green space of some sort. The final sort of two items that I want to highlight: cash in lieu average rate per acre. That's $86,000 per acre currently. If approved, this ordinance would establish a methodology to update that cash in lieu rate on every 2 years. We anticipate an update if this is approved later this year. And then the one element that doesn't get changed with this ordinance, if it were to be approved, is the OSPR plan's overall objective to preserve 40% of Broomfield as open lands. That remains in place. Public land dedication is one of many elements that help to advance that objective. And Parks, Open Space and Trails Director Kristen Pritz had discussed sort of all of those inventory during the first reading. But that concludes my presentation. Told you it would be brief this evening, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. We will now proceed with public comments. If any residents are using the call-in service, they should indicate their desire to speak by pressing *9 to raise their hand. We will start with in-person comments. Anyone? No one. All right, we will look to online. Is anyone online? And no one's online either. So we will move to council questions from council are next. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. The time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. Are there any questions? Seeing no questions. Let me make sure I don't have any questions. I don't have any questions. The public hearing is now closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2273. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2273 to amend the Broomfield Municipal Code, Title 16 and Title 17, related to public land dedication and other definitions related to open space and recreation facilities.
Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second and final reading in order published by title? Councilmember Leslie?
Move the resolution.
Is there a second? Councilmember Marshallson.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will move forward on the vote for ordinance number 2273. Council, please cast your vote electronically. Councilmember Delgadillo, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
And Councilmember Cohen and Councilmember Henkel have left our meeting, so they are absent at this point. So all council members have entered their vote. The results will now be displayed on the screen, and that passes 8-0 unanimously. Thank you, council. There are no mayor or council member requests for future action this evening. Is there any other business to come before the council from my council colleagues or staff? Seeing none, the business meeting is adjourned.